next week or something?
You good to go yours?
I don't think so. But we
All right, to the booth, we are ready to go.
like part-time clerk or something.
This is one there. Is
All right.
There you go.
Good evening, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Lunenburg Select Board. Today is Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oops, sorry.
Evan, would you like to call your meeting to order?
It is 7:04. I would like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order as well.
All right. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live over the Lunenburg Public Access channel, on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. All right, the agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. Tonight, we are joined by the members of our state delegation, Senator John Cronin, Representative Mike Kuchmarek, and Representative Margaret Scarsdale. This meeting is an annual tradition in which the Select Board advises our state senator and representatives of key financial and general legislative needs for the town. It is also a discussion in which the members of our state delegation inform us of their priorities. The Select Board is joined today by the Chair of the School Committee, Carol, and the Chair of the Finance Committee, Evan. At next week's meeting, the Select Board will finalize the priorities and provide them to our senator and representatives. Following introductions and the presentations of our draft priorities by the town manager, the Select Board will engage in about 10 minutes of discussion about those priorities, followed by 10 minutes of discussion on other legislative concerns. The Chair of the School Committee will take about 10 minutes to discuss legislative priorities. The Chair of the Finance Committee will take 10 minutes to discuss legislative priorities. And then we will engage in about 15 minutes of conversation from members of the School Committee, Finance Committee, and the public on topics of concern. At about 8:20 or so, we will wrap up our meeting with our delegation and begin the regular meeting of the Select Board, starting with announcements and ordinary public comments. On behalf of the Select Board, I extend a warm welcome to all, and to our senator and representatives. Senator John Cronin is one of Lunenburg's own. He graduated from Lunenburg High and went on to West Point, where he went on to serve as an infantry officer, which is a competitive and prestigious assignment. Senator Cronin served our nation in multiple deployments to Afghanistan, and since 2020 has served our town as a senator for the Worcester-Middlesex District. John now lives in Leominster and represents the communities of Fitchburg, Leominster, Gardner, Berlin, Bolton, Lancaster, Lunenburg, Sterling, Townsend, Westminster, and 2 precincts in Clinton. Senator Cronin has taken keen interest in working to provide equitable access to workforce development and serves as the chair of the Joint Committee of Municipalities and Regional Government and as vice chair of Tourism, Arts, and Cultural Development. He is a member of the Joint Committee on Education, the Joint Committee on Economic Development and Emerging Technologies, and the Joint Committee on Community Development and Small Business. Representative Mike Kuchmarek is currently serving his second term as a state representative for the 3rd Worcester District, beginning his tenure in January of 2021. He currently serves as the vice chair of the Joint Committee on Tourism, Arts, and Cultural Development, and as the House chair of the Polish American Legislative Caucus. Prior to his role in the state legislature, Representative Kuchmarek served as a Fitchburg City Councilor from 2014 to 2021, including 5 years as council president. Fueled by a passion to provide the region's residents with access to affordable higher education opportunities, Mike has held positions in higher education, administration, and development at Northeastern University, Worcester Polytech Institute, and Fitchburg State University, where he earned a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in history. Mike is married to Carissa, a licensed social worker and program director, and is a new father to a 10-month-old son, Gabriel. As a high school dropout and the product of a home that battled substance abuse, mental health, and homelessness, Mike is passionate about dismantling socioeconomic barriers to success and ensuring that everyone has an equitable opportunity to pursue their dreams and goals. Representative Margaret Scarsdale was sworn into her first term this year and represents 3 of the 4 districts in town. Margaret comes to us from Pepperell and is from Townsend, but my notes may be wrong on this one, but I believe it's from Pepperell. And is a representative for the 1st Middlesex District in 2022, which includes 3 of the 4 districts in town. Margaret is a dedicated public servant, committed to fierce advocacy for her constituents. Before her election, Representative Scarsdale served as chair of the Pepperell Select Board, chair of the Light, Air, and Noise Bylaw Committee, as an environmental activist, a small business owner, and community economic development leader. In her new role, she expects to continue to provide collaborative, proactive leadership for the 1st Middlesex District and the Massachusetts House of Representatives. Thank you again, Senator Cronin, Representative Kuchmarek, and Representative Scarsdale for joining us this evening, and I invite you to provide a few opening remarks.
Hey, good evening, everybody. It's a privilege to be here with you all. Every time I come in here to Town Hall, I'm kind of taken back to when I was a kid and my dad was debating up on the stage, running for select board. And I kind of get the chills every time I see Joe Bellata and his painting. So I have a lot of good memories, and it was certainly my first foray as a very young person into public service and elected office. It's been a privilege to be able to serve the North Central region in the Massachusetts Senate. It's been a privilege to represent the town of Lunenburg. I think my office talks and thinks about every day about the broader regional impacts of everything we're doing on Beacon Hill. And I think there's some profound reasons for optimism about the future for our community here in Lunenburg and in North Central. There's a lot to be optimistic about. I think the economy, across the nation, there's some storm clouds. I spent 3 weeks ago a day at a ribbon cutting at Devon's for a fusion energy company and research and development center that is doing the most cutting edge R&D to develop really the green energy of the future. But there are going to be 600 engineers employed at Devon's. And I know my family settled in Leominster and Lunenburg 50, 60 years ago, and we were brought here by the Army base. And I think when the Army base left, we thought it was going to be the most devastating thing to happen in this region. I think quite the opposite has been true. So there's some real profound opportunities for growth. We all know the local challenges that we're facing in terms of Chapter 70, Chapter 90. Look forward to getting into that. Talking about some of our other focus areas, whether it be access to career and vocational education on Beacon Hill. But I'll end by just saying it's been a special privilege to be able to serve and represent the town with Representative Kuchmarek, who's been a great partner over the last 2 years. And I cannot be more excited to work closely with Representative Scarsdale, and she's hit the ground running. And look forward to continuing to serve the town with both of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Mike Kuchmarek. This is my second term now joining you, and it's been a pleasure to meet with the Select Board now in I think the third consecutive year, and now in the second consecutive year with the Finance Committee, and looking forward to now engaging as well with the School Committee. As Senator Cronin mentioned, it's been an absolute honor and privilege to both serve alongside you and work with you and engage at a town and municipal level to really understand and get to know on an intimate basis the needs of the community, but also the incredible opportunities that await for Lunenburg in the future and its residents and businesses, of course. I think we have a lot to work on, certainly, despite, I think some of the overwhelming successes of the legislature in the last session. certainly a lot more to do. I know each of you chairs have sent topics that we'll be covering this evening, and so I don't want to dive in too deeply here, but I know, education and infrastructure funding are among the most pressing needs. Chairman Jeffries, you mentioned, my time on the Fitchburg City Council, and certainly for 8 years, certainly looked often to the guidance of the state and our state delegation to help us address those deep issues around there never being enough infrastructure funding and how to best provide the opportunities that we had through our school system when we were children and providing that for the generation ahead. So we've got a lot of work to do, but I think a lot of opportunities as well. Certainly, I know we'll be getting into the conversations around special education, reimbursement rates, and approved cost thresholds. Certainly topics that 3 years ago I was not as well versed as I am in today, for better or for worse, but looking forward to certainly engaging and, to the residents of Lunenburg, hundreds of whom have reached out over the past 24 months in my first term in office. Thank you for reaching out, engaging us. The number of businesses that have reached out for either help or just to engage. But looking forward to the conversation this evening and the continued dialogue with residents and businesses alike. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My comments will echo those of Senator Cronin and Rep. Kushmarek, chiefly that it is such an honor to be here and to work on continuing to build a purposeful and productive partnership to help address Lunenburg's needs. I am in my 6th week at the State House, and I can say with all sincerity that it has been very robust and also very rewarding. Although I only had 12 hours in which to submit bills because I was sworn in late, I'm very happy to say that I was able to get 9 into the pipeline, and those really deal with fundamental issues that the towns have around schools, around our roads, our first responders, and health. I am the new kid on the block, as they say, and I'm very honored to be here with Senator Cronin and Rep. Kushmarek and to listen and to learn so that I can also be a very active partner with you, and I'm looking forward to our work ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm going to turn to the town manager who will present our draft priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to our legislators for continuing to engage with us at these public meetings. So I just want to take a moment to review our previous year submissions and how they, where they're at with where they were funded. So last year we requested 7 different earmarks, $330,000 for the Flat Hill Road Culvert Project, $371,000 for the hazardous materials abatement and demolition of the old primary school building, $100,000 for the senior center building improvements, $232,800 for the AC at the primary school, $25,000 for the Marshall Park survey, $150,000 for a restroom facility improvements at Marshall Park, and $75,000 for Northfield Park master plan and survey. So currently, we did receive a small bridge grant in the amount of $500,000 for the Flat Hill Road project, in addition to $428,500. That was a local appropriation. So we expect we're fully funded for that project. For the earmark, there was an earmark given for the hazardous materials abatement and demolition. That was through the state. That was through the bond bill that passed this fall. So we're still working with the state on all the paperwork associated with that. We received a $100,000 earmark for that. For the senior center, we received a $100,000 earmark for the ADA patio improvements to that project. So we're very thankful for all these grant recipients and also the earmarks through the state budget process. For the primary school, that was funded at a town meeting. That project right now is on hold for the next steps, which the school committee is expected to discuss at future meetings. The Marshall Park survey was funded as well at the annual town meeting, so that project has been funded and it is complete. So that work is complete. And the restroom facilities and Northfield Park master plan, those are on hold. We did do funding for the design for Marshall Park, so that was funding that was appropriated at the annual town meeting. And the Northfield Park master plan is on our capital plan. For our submittals that are going to be part of my recommendations to date, we did also solicit input from all our boards and committees and staff for any requests, and they're due back by next Monday. So that will be part of the discussion for the board next week to finalize the list. But the recommendations before you tonight from the town manager are for security upgrades at the public safety building. There's a critical project at that location. The estimated cost is $50,000. The chief is working on final cost estimates for that project. 3 projects that are on our fiscal '24 capital plan that were high priority were security upgrades at the Turkey Hill Elementary School and primary school. Each of those projects, one is for $160,000, one for $131,000, and one for $83,500. The third recommendation is for the fire alarm at the Turkey Hill Elementary School, which is also on the fiscal '24 capital plan. And that amount is $287,000. Fourth priority would be funding for our Marshall Park. They continue to advocate, and the board, I think, is in complete agreement for additional funding for that project. Any funding available, they're researching all grants possible and any funding resources. And fifth, cemetery monument restoration at North and South Cemeteries for $38,000.
All right, so before we go into our legislative other concerns that we have, and I'm sure you know we're going to have more, I just want to give you guys the opportunity to respond to those requests as the town manager just outlined.
I'll take the first hack at it. We got a couple Cronins buried in North Cemetery, so that's going to be a priority for me. No, I really appreciate having this dialogue. This is the perfect time of the year for us to have it. The House is going to take up its budget in April. The Senate will debate our budget in May. And that's really the opportunity that we have to deliver kind of those targeted earmarks to special projects, for lack of a better term. Over the last 2 years, Representative Kushmerek and I were able to work together to secure that funding for the senior center, the elementary school, and the primary school, working with Rep. Sina too. So we appreciate these priorities. I feel confident saying I speak for the rest of the delegation that we will take these forward with us through the budget process and work to deliver for the town.
All right, thank you.
And I'll just add, I appreciate, I think, 2 years ago, we had a conversation too, just about, feasibility and amounts for different funded projects. And these really do fall within line of a lot of the parameters for earmarks that we can seek. So I appreciate you not only taking those to heart, but then designing some of those requests around the parameters that we have. And I have to commend Rep. Scarsdale, who called just last week, and we were having a conversation about earmarks and at what point are we going to get the priorities. And so, 5 weeks on the job, she was already interested about, all right, what are the funds and the priorities to select. So I'm pleased to have a really ambitious, and active partner here to be able to engage as we move into the budget. And so on the House side, I think many have heard the governor put out her first proposal for the budget. The House will be the first to take it up in the last week of April, and then the Senate begins their task before we then reconcile the differences between House and Senate. So looking forward to engaging you more as we go through the budget process.
And I would also I know we'll kind of dive more into the implementation of the Student Opportunity Act and Chapter 70 funding. But I remember the first time that I think Rep. Kushmerek and I appeared before the Finance Committee, we talked a lot about school funding. And I think it is important to note over the past 2 fiscal years, or the last fiscal year, the town really saw a significant jump and an increase of $2 million in Chapter 70 funding. I think we're projecting a much flatter increase between last fiscal year and this fiscal year. But that is something that the delegation is working through with all the communities that we represent as this Student Opportunity Act is fully implemented between now and 2027.
Okay. I want to turn to fellow members from the board. So we're going to kind of go down the line. If any members have anything to offer in terms of other legislative concerns, I imagine that Mr. Alonso and I will have several, but I just want to give the opportunity to all the members here. If there are any, as we keep moving, okay?
I have no questions, but I do want to thank you for coming and hearing us.
The only 2 pieces I want to bring up have nothing to do with the budget. They're really legislative pieces. One is, at this point, probably 14 or 15 years old, and I will ask yet again, I see Representative Kushmarek nodding his head about the municipal electric bill, that I hope we can get some traction somewhere. But that is still, has a lot of attention here in Lunenburg and probably the larger region. Certainly the Unitil region, if not other regions too, I think, at this point. So that would be one piece. The other piece is something I bring up from time to time as it comes up, as the town is facing yet another 40B project that is, I'll use the word contentious, why not? I hope that our delegation is looking at what this proponent is looking to do that has now fallen into a kind of a gray area that I hope that the maybe can be straightened out in the legislation about what is and isn't allowed through a 40B, and that is the the usurpation of legislative action that the proponent is putting on, and that is what is before the what's going on with that project now. So. There's no case history on it, and so this is going to be fought out in a court here, and hopefully we can at least get that part of it straightened out, that it was designed from my perspective, it was designed to override policies and local bylaws, but not legislative powers of the town, or in this case, the Water District too. So those are the 2 issues I'd like to raise.
I'd also, you wanted to respond, Mr.
I'm happy to respond to the specifics, but happy to.
I want to jump on that 40B. So, so 40B, I want to just add to the 40B because I also have 2 areas of concern. The first is 40B. I think when we kind of look back at the history of what a 40B is supposed to be, it's supposed to provide access to communities for people who otherwise would not be able to have that access. It's supposed to provide housing, more housing stock generally into the market. And so, a lot has changed since this law was created to now, that the gap between rich and poor has gotten much bigger. So when we talk about a 40B that's being proposed on Howard Street, what got approved, through the state to get to this point was an affordable unit, affordable 3-bedroom unit is being priced at $2,799 a month. That is ridiculous. And the idea that the state has a law that allows people to come under the guise of affordability and do that kind of stuff, it's outrageous. I think we all are committed to the principles of affordable housing. I think everyone is generally committed to the idea that everyone needs a good quality place to live, right? But this 40B stuff, it needs to be changed. I don't have a problem if those thresholds were lower. It wouldn't upset me in the least. However, when we talk about having a 200-unit development being allowed to come into town, because we are only short of roughly 18 or somewhere between 10 and 18 units, then now they get to jump a 200-unit development on us. I really would like for you guys to reevaluate some of these rules. I know that, and along with that comes the MBTA community requirement, that the state came up with this requirement that since we have railroad tracks that go through our town, that we need to allow a super high density development. And I think the verbiage was either 25 or 50 acres.
Well, we're an adjacent community.
We're an adjacent community.
Not even.
And so when you look at that, where's the money coming for the school system? Where's the money coming from the roads? It's an unfunded mandate that has a huge impact onto our community. And so, if the state has this interest, which we all understand is coming from the governor, but we need more money to address it. And I know you were going to respond, Representative Kushner.
Did you want to take 40B first?
Yeah, sure, I'll just address the housing kind of first and foremost. I think it's important for us to kind of start at 30,000 feet. And I think the agreed upon number is the state is short somewhere over 100,000 housing units that we need today to meet the current workforce demands we have, to meet the current demand. And we're going to be short if we can't figure out a way to get there 400,000 units by 2040. So it's a growth imperative. It's got everything to do with our economic vibrancy, not just in Boston, but everywhere across the state. I think it affects our ability to attract 21st century industries. But I agree with you, right? We shouldn't be coming down and levying these unfunded mandates on towns that aren't ready to allow or mitigate the unintended consequences of that growth. I think our role as legislators and what we can do, especially working with the new administration, is to try to direct that growth to places where it's good for the region. And I think the two of us really do take a regional approach. I know Representative Scarsdale is there with us. We have MBTA communities throughout north central Massachusetts. We have MBTA communities where we are zoned and ready and willing, and we just need private investment to build. And I would point you right to the transportation hub in downtown Fitchburg. The issue that we are having right now is that the cost to build market rate housing in north central Massachusetts, there is a funding gap between the cost to build and the market rate rents that developers can get. And so we're not building any housing that is dense and that is market rate. And we need all types of housing. We need more affordable units, we need more workforce units, but we want to make sure that that we're also building market rate units to support our economy, to attract that workforce. One of the things that myself and Representative Kushmerek have filed this session is HDIP. It's to expand the Housing Development Incentive Program. It's aimed at gateway cities, but it's important for places like Lunenburg, because if we can build more housing in Fitchburg and Leominster, which are two of the state's 26 gateway cities, we're going to relieve a lot of the pressure that we feel in our tight housing market here. And so what that would do is address the funding gap. And it would really spur private investment in places like north central Massachusetts. Right now, the program works. It's really effective. It's been most effective in places like Chelsea and Revere and within 128, but we know it works in places like Fitchburg and Leominster too. So we have filed legislation to triple that cap, to increase the individual project cap to $5 million. And so that is just an example that I would give to you of ways that we are trying to drive policy at the state level that's going to have a regional impact and take pressure off communities like Lunenburg, but also provide the housing that we know we need to grow if we want to continue to have a vibrant 21st century economy, which we are trying to build, right? If everybody could think of what it means to have 600 engineers working at Devon's, I think the opportunity for us as a region is to make sure they're not reverse commuting from Lexington, that they are choosing to live in Lunenburg or Fitchburg or Devon's, where we need to raise the housing cap, but they're staying here in North Central and raising their families. And I think all those other things that we want to do, building our commercial tax base to relieve the burden off of residential property owners, really drives from that. So it's not an easy issue. There's no silver bullets. I think the three of us want to work as mediators between the state and the town. I understand the concerns of a 200-unit development and what that means in terms of infrastructure burdens placed on the town. and other consequences. And so I think we appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation and want to engage and help any way we can.
Senator Cronin just, I think, nailed it with the, you have more than 200 units. With that comes a whole bevy of unintended consequences from water, wastewater considerations, traffic flow, impact on your school system, and then the wraparound services necessary when you add a large-scale development in one portion of a town to ensure that folks that eventually get that housing are then successful where they are and have the opportunities to thrive and flourish. Housing is just one component of ensuring that folks can be prosperous and thrive in a community. And so I think you have that commitment from us is to work with you to better understand where the gaps in 40B are in the current legislation and to try to, again, act as an intermediary between the administration, who is really trying to, in both administrations, right? Former Governor Baker, current Governor Healy, both, I think, share that passion for housing and are trying to move forward with a blistering speed, if you will. But I think we stand here committed to work with you to better understand the issues that you confront when you see these large-scale projects, and then how better to improve the program as we move forward. And to that same point as well, of to look at how we help incentivize that proportional growth of, as we add affordable housing, how do you then add additional tax revenue that helps support those services that inevitably are needed, and those the needs that ultimately get hoisted onto the town government. So looking at both commercial growth to offset, as well as that market rate on the housing side. To switch topics slightly and address your first point, Mr. Vice Chair, with regards to the Muni Choice Bill to tackle the high energy costs in north central Massachusetts. And there's four towns that fall in the catchment area of Unitil. There's only 4 communities in Massachusetts that rely on Unitil for their electric and gas needs, and that's Fitchburg, Lunenburg, Ashby, and Townsend. This is a bill I'm particularly passionate about. My passion goes back about 15 years when I was about 13 days without power in Fitchburg, and I just moved into my first not so affordable apartment with my now wife. And not only did we go without power, and we ultimately lost every appliance in the apartment. And so that formed a passion at a pretty early age about how we properly hold our utility companies accountable, not only for their actions, but also how we make them more dependable, more reliable, at a lower cost. And so I have to commend one of my predecessors, then Representative, now Mayor Di Natale, for the city of Fitchburg, who really co-authored and championed this bill in the legislature throughout the duration. And unfortunately, there was about a 5-year gap from the time he left the legislature until Senator Cronin and I came into office, when we reauthored the bill, retooled it to make it conform to modern Mass General law on energy and environmental resources. So we've put this bill forward, and for the public and those who, I know Lunenburg is all too well aware of the Muni Choice Bill for those who have been here for a long time, but just the real crux of it is today, if a municipality wanted to acquire the energy infrastructure of a private investor-owned utility, the investor-owned utility has essentially the right to exercise a veto over any proposed transaction. However, if a town or a city wanted to build a sidewalk in front of your house for a safe road to school, you as an individual property owner, and many of whom who are behind me, wouldn't have the opportunity to exercise a veto. And so why does investor-owned utilities have a veto power that almost no other landowning entity in Massachusetts has? And so the bill takes aim at exactly that, of stripping utility companies, specifically investor-owned utilities, of the ability to exercise that veto, and helps to streamline the process for a municipality or a group of municipalities, if all 4 communities wanted to go into a collaborative municipal energy arrangement, the opportunity to be able to collectively bargain, purchase at a fair market value the energy infrastructure, and then launch a municipally owned energy company, which we know in Massachusetts, among those with the cheapest rates and the highest affordability, are almost every single municipal energy company before you then get into the investor-owned. And look no further than the town of Sterling has all the same demanding challenges that we have in Fitchburg, Ashby, Townsend, and Lunenburg, of topography and rural areas and urban areas. But they're able to offer the lowest cost in the Commonwealth and the highest response rates during outages. And so, we reauthored and filed the bill last session. And over the past 2 years, I think we've made some tremendous progress in helping to move this legislation forward, meeting with the chairs of telecommunications, utilities, and energy to really get their feedback on why this bill, over the course of 15 years, has failed to move forward beyond that committee at any stage over those 15 years. And really talked with us about the needs for some tweaks in that legislation, but also the ability to partner. Traditionally, it's been, climate activists don't like municipal energy, and our conservative friends across the aisle have been skeptical about energy reform and taking rights away from companies. The landscape has changed dramatically over the past 15 years, and so now we're building a broad coalition, a bipartisan or even a nonpartisan coalition to really look at energy democratization is now how we're rebranding this on a mass scale. If we make this just about 4 communities in north central Massachusetts, it's going to be hard to convince another 347 communities across the Commonwealth that this is the right move. But if we talk about this on a broad scale about how energy democratization, energy grid reliability, and how municipal rights to exercise over investor-owned utilities are most paramount to not only ratepayers but also municipalities, that's a campaign set up for success. So we're engaging a Conservation Law Foundation who has taken this up as a priority piece of legislation. It's the first time we've had a large advocacy group and at this point a national advocacy group really take this up as a cause and champion this as a piece of legislation worth pursuing. With that brings some additional resources to be able to help us in our cause. I'm not sitting here promising you that this piece of legislation will be passed in the next 18 months, but I'm telling you, I think we're in a much better situation than we have been at any point over the previous 14 years. And I think we have some real ability to help move this legislation forward in a really productive fashion.
And maybe just to put a button on it, but I would like to add and maybe, just reiterate that we're not happy with where we are. I pay Unitil bills just like everybody else in Fitchburg and Lunenburg does. And the prices are exorbitant. We engaged DPU last year. I think what was really useful for us is, we found that the rates are consistent with rates that other providers across the state provide, but what's inconsistent is the delivery rates, and that's where we really see, the wide disparity between our provider and other providers. And, the DPU sets the rates, but it's something that we need to continue to engage DPU and continue to engage, frankly, the Attorney General on and need a deeper investigation into. And we've been fighting, we know and we understand because we have gotten hundreds of people on heating assistance throughout this region. So we understand the impact that it has, especially on seniors and especially on people on fixed incomes. And that's not lost on us and gives us a sense of urgency to address this issue. What I'd also say, and it's not, it's not life-changing, but we have advocated through this winter and we've seen DPU issue 2 rate reductions for the supply of natural gas as natural gas has gone down throughout the winter. So that's less than 20% relief, but it's some relief, and I do believe it's because we've been adamant, we've been on DPU, and it's not much, but it's not nothing either. And we're going to continue to stay on it.
And just to build off of, Senator Cronin mentioned, working with the Attorney General, and I have to give credit to, former Attorney General, now Governor Healy, who actually brought a lawsuit against Unitil, which resulted in about a 40% reduction last winter, which should have been a $70 increase per average bill, ended up being about a 40% increase. So, still predatory in their rate structure, but thankful to the then Attorney General for stepping up and standing up to Unitil. And, we've already engaged in conversations with Attorney General Campbell and her office to make sure that they're aware of the issues that we face. And you can be certain that we'll be engaging with her office and her team to ensure that we continue to leverage every entity available in the state to take this fight to Unitil.
All right, Representative Scarsdale.
Yes, thank you. I'll be very brief because I think the topic has been unpacked pretty well. I just wanted to say I have 6 towns in my district. 3 of those are Unitil customers. I get hundreds of emails a day, and I would say proportionally the number of emails related to Unitil, their service, their rates, it is phenomenally out of scale with other topics that I receive emails on. So people are very frustrated, and there really needs to be change there. And interestingly enough, one of the towns in my district has their own municipal light department. And I think, as Senator Cronin said, they have wonderful service, they have reasonable rates. I'm honored to have signed onto this bill on the House side, and will work with the Senator and Representative Kushmerek to do what I can to help get it across the line as well. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Representative Scarsdale. The last area of concern that I just wanted to address before we move on to the school committee is taxes. So one of the things that we've learned, on this board as select board, we work with the budget, with the town manager, we sign off on all the bills. We don't have much to do with how people's homes get assessed. But what I've learned in these last couple of months is that the state looks to bring every home to 100% or 90 to 110% to the fair market value. And what was one of the things that we've talked about tonight is that, we're missing 100,000 units, that we need them today. I think it was in the paper last week that the state lost a population of 100,000 people. So even with losing 100,000 people, we still need 100,000 more units. What's happened over the last couple of years is that we've gone into this remote and hybrid work model. And so the people who were working within the 128 corridor can now leave it and keep those well-paying jobs. So that then presents an issue here in our community where you have people who've lived in town for a very, very long time, who have made modest or minimal improvements to their homes, and who now are being forced to pay based on what their neighbors who sell. And so, the question is there a way to modify, and I know we've already talked before about what can be done now, and I understand the limitations there, but as we look to the future, inflation is not going anywhere. And if this housing crunch isn't resolved sooner than later, these prices will continue to go up because there's not enough stock for the demand. We have to gradually increase taxes on our residents. And so one of the things I'm looking for you guys on is other states have adopted a model. And certainly the town, is going to need money to operate. But there needs to be some kind of balance, in my opinion, between, a homeowner who's looking to stay at their home, be there. Maybe there's some kind of agreement or deferred or something that can be done that allows the town to gradually increase their taxes rather than having to hit them all at once. So I know that this is a complicated issue, and I expect that as we go later in this conversation and we turn it to open the floor to members of the public, that many of the people who are sitting here behind you tonight are going to raise this issue and this concern. But again, I would just urge that we look at some other states for models for how we can keep people in their homes. Because it's a really scary thing if you're a senior citizen and you're in your 60s or 70s and you have no idea now what you're going to do, where you're going to live. it feels so unfair. And I think in our role, what we're realizing is that we have minimal options. It's all about state law. So that's something that, I know we've talked about it before. I think that as we go through this process and we identify specific requests, as I committed to you before, we will come to you with a specific request. But this seems to be a big picture thing, that if 2020 saw a 23% increase in property values, 2021 did, and if 2022 saw something similar, our residents will be hurting badly. We need some relief.
Mr. Chair? If I may add to that, I mean, one of the things that we're working on, and Mr. Franco and I are, heading up a group to provide senior relief, specifically for seniors who have a certain longevity in town and meet certain financial requirements to provide tax relief. But that tax relief is coming at the town level, and it's going to be proposed to offset it away from seniors and then to disperse whatever we're I don't want to say abating them, but whatever we're offering them as relief, and basically the rest of the townspeople will cover that shift. Having grown up on Long Island, my dad lived to be able to stay in his home till he was about 87 years old before he moved to an assisted living, and he was only able to do that because on Long Island, where I grew up and where he lived, that there was substantial senior benefits to the tune of like 50% school tax decrease for people who met those criteria. He would never have been able to stay in his home, which he was capable of doing, I mean, physically, but the financial part of it, if he didn't get that 50%, would have priced him out for a long time. Now, I don't know that it needs to be exactly the same model, but I think at the state level, not at the local level, I know we're trying to model our local legislation after what other towns have done across the Commonwealth, of which there are a few. But I think it should come from the state level, that we should look to keep seniors who have stayed and lived in a town for X amount of years and proven their desire and their ability to provide foundational, support and energy to the towns that they lived in, to, in their senior years, give some relief in some regard, and spread it out across the state, not across just the town. So I would look to just echo what the chair said, Mr. Jeffries, in looking at that, what other states have done to provide that.
Lunenburg is, for the third census in a row, federal census in a row, one of the fastest growing municipalities in the entire Commonwealth. It's effectively tripled your population in 30 years. It's unparalleled, really, to any other community or municipality in north central Massachusetts, where we've seen either stagnant or declining populations in most of your surrounding communities. And so that demand, you're absolutely right, is not going away, and the prices continue to grow. And I think regardless of what happens at a national level, I don't think we expect to see the housing market cool, either in the Commonwealth and in particular in this particular town. So absolutely, we look forward to engaging with you. And Chairman Jeffries, since I first met you, you've been talking about this issue, and you as well, Vice Chair Alonso, of this has been a constant topic that you've been passionate about, and we stand ready and excited to explore those conversations with you about how we can look at other states as models and move forward.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you remembering that, because I know I ran for office saying we got to do something to keep seniors in our community because we're pricing them out. And so I know 40Bs and seniors are the two things I just keep hammering you guys with.
First conversation we ever had, yeah.
All right. So I want to turn.
Could I
Yes,
add a couple
absolutely.
more? I'll be brief as well, because I know the school and finance is waiting to add on to the list. So Chapter 90, we received what our apportionment will be for next year. It's slightly less than this year. And part of that problem, I think, is that's the level of funding that's been every year appropriated. The $200 million has been stagnated at that amount for years. So I think that's definitely something that needs to be on the list to advocate more funding for. Local aid, our number, I know you know those numbers. Our aggregate
based on local aid and the assessment, reduction in assessments, is $235,000 more than last year, which last year we received approximately $1 million aggregate over the previous fiscal year. The building code, the new building code that's going to go into effect is going to significantly hurt builders and residents, in my opinion. So I think there needs to be a better balance with affordable housing and the code. I know the intent is to create better conservation measures and energy reduction, but the new code is a significant impact to those people. Senior tax relief, already noted, but there's been bills filed previously that have died out on a program that would mirror the state senior tax circuit breaker program. So if something like that, so we wouldn't have to file a home rule petition. If the state did a program like that, we could just adopt it at a town meeting. And lastly, remote meeting and what the status of that will be, because that deadline, I think, is March 31st, or the end of March.
We like the rules as they are now, not what was proposed last year.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so turning to Carol. Carol, if you want to represent the concerns from the school committee.
Certainly. I'm happy to do that, and I'm very glad to work with our legislators. I appreciate the outreach that I've gotten from all of you at one time or another, and we are looking forward to working together. I have, because I knew I had very limited time, and I sent you my laundry list, but I have three basic things I want to talk about tonight. First is the sunset of federal ESSER funds. Our community benefited greatly from the ESSER funds. They were used mostly on instructional and social emotional support for our students, who of course lost a great deal during COVID. We did what we were told to do. We spent the money, and it will be spent on time by the 30th of September in 2024. All funds will be spent. And when we look at conversations that even MASC or MASS, and even what I've heard, small amounts from the state, they're trying to work on getting everybody to spend their money. Well, what about those of us that did, and now our kids need additional support? The money is gone, but the problem is not. So I don't know if there's a way anything can be done at the state level, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands we did what we were supposed to do, and we have 20%, nearly 20% of our children require some kind of social emotional support at this point. And that's a lot of kids. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the difficulty of unfunded mandates. This turns into a major problem. Right now there is a bill about financial literacy, and I agree with the bill. People need to know what happens when you take out a mortgage. Kids need to know how to do a checkbook. They need to understand these things. But the proposal states that I think it's the House bill, that I could have them reversed, that states that that instruction would go on in the math classes. Okay. And they are saying that there will be funding for the state to organize and send us how to buy things and how to spend money on professional development. But there's no funding attached. And besides that, they have just raised the threshold for MCAS for those kids in math. So you want to take this financial literacy program, throw it into math, and wonder why the kids don't meet the threshold. You can't, there's only so much time, and there's only so much money. That would be an unfunded mandate. Another one that I completely agree with, but scares me to death, is universal pre-K. Not only do I think it's a wonderful idea, all kids need this opportunity. to have pre-K education. Where are we going to put them? We don't have room in our school buildings. We don't have equipment for additional classes. We don't have teachers. So if this goes into effect, there has to be some kind of funding at the state level to help communities. We just can't, we don't even have a place to put them. I can't even imagine, and we're not the only people with that problem. So, and another, actually Representative Kushmarek talked about another, though you probably wouldn't call it an unfunded mandate, but it falls into that. The raising by 14% of out-of-district special education placements. So we have to pay 14% more. We didn't get 14% more back. We got some back on the circuit breaker, obviously, but not 14%. So these are unfunded things that come at our school district, and we have with our town manager, who has been great working with us, we're raising our budget about 2.5%, but Monty Tech can raise theirs 12%. And we don't have a say in that. So it's a very difficult situation with the unfunded mandates. So that's my second thing. The third thing is MSBA right now has no accelerated repair program. And the accelerated repair program is for roofs, windows, and boilers. We have an old school building in Lunenburg that requires some attention. We do not have debt capacity to have a new building right now. We do not have debt capacity to do the major renovation all at once that is required for MSBA under master renovation, I think is what they call it. The only thing we have a prayer's chance at is this accelerated repair program that is no longer being funded temporarily, I hope. So that would be my last very quick comment, because I know I had 10 minutes, and for which you to comment back. But those are, along with the other things that I sent you that have to do, with difficulty in education right now. So I would turn to you. Any thoughts?
I'll be very brief and just hit two of the issues you raised. The first is unfunded mandates. I hear you. I think everybody on Beacon Hill there has no shortage of good ideas. And where the rubber meets the road, we need to hear from school committees and superintendents when things like that are being considered. And so thank you for raising that, and you have our commitment to not levy those burdens and those requirements on the school system. The second point that I want to address is early childhood education. The state received some really significant federal grants through the pandemic, and I don't think, I know we'll talk a little bit more about the millionaire's tax, but I don't think there is. It is aspirational to say that we are headed towards universal pre-K, because there is a really significant sticker tag attached to that. It's also a area in a public policy domain where we don't want to move back on. So we received billions of dollars in C3 grants to strengthen and really solidify through the pandemic the 4,000 public and public providers that already exist, and to means test eligibility to those programs. We were able to expand those services through federal funding, and that's an area that the state is committed to not moving backwards in. So things like the millionaire's tax, things like the surplus funds that the state has right now, but will not have forever, are being committed to solidify and continue to support the infrastructure out there that already exists. So what I don't believe is feasible, what I don't believe we'll see in 2 or 3 years is us or Beacon Hill coming back to the town and say, find a way, increase your minimum required contributions. Every kid needs a seat in a public building. I think we're gonna build capacity from the bottom up. I think the goal right now is to not move back as we emerge from the pandemic. And so we're gonna see increased state funding and support for those C3 grant programs. But I don't think that's a burden that's going to be levied on the town now or anytime soon.
Okay.
So I'll start by commending you on spending the ESSER 1 and 2 funds and kind of meeting that projected spend deadline, and that may seem laughable to some, but you'd be surprised just how few municipalities in Massachusetts are properly prepared to exhaust their ESSER 1 and 2 federal funding to address social, emotional, and a whole host of other needs across the community. So that speaks to good government and competent administration. So I applaud you there. And certainly, I think to get at the heart of your question there with regards to supporting the social, emotional needs, I think it's something that every single school district in this Commonwealth is struggling with at this point. We're struggling with attracting and retaining a mental health workforce in the Commonwealth. The need has doubled in the past decade for social workers and mental health professionals, yet at best we've held a stagnant workforce in that field, and at worst we have lost about 20% of our workforce as recently as the pandemic. I know some of this because my wife is a social worker, and these are the dining room conversations, as she has about a 40% vacancy rate with her social workers. And it's putting a strain on everybody, but I think most pronounced of those needs are the school systems who are trying to grow their capacity at the same time as they're struggling to find not only the workforce but the funding to be able to do it. So I don't have a silver bullet for you. I can tell you it's something that we're talking about nearly every day amongst superintendents, among school committees, and amongst us as a legislature of finding how do we find the funding and how do we get the workforce and how do we keep the workforce in place so our schools can get them. So, you know, I filed about 3 different bills that offer kind of my long and short-term solutions at maybe how we start to increase the social worker and mental health support structure for both youth and elders alike. But you know, I think there's no shortage of good ideas on Beacon Hill, but it's the rubber meeting the road, as Senator Cronin said. I can speak to the special education piece, the 14% cost increase that you're seeing year over year compounded with, you know, and that's over a time where over the previous decade, you reliably could plan on a 1.5% increase year to year on your reimbursements and your costs around both transportation and tuition alike, and then a 14% increase overnight. I think is a shock to everybody. And I think from the largest school districts in the Commonwealth to the most rural in the Commonwealth, everybody is struggling to figure out how to tackle this. You know, I think compounding those are, again, workforce shortages and special education is another field where we're just seeing, you know, we're not seeing the growth rate that we need to sustain the increase in need and demand in special education. Not to mention, we're seeing an increase in the severity, a dramatic increase in the severity of needs. So those who had needs now need a whole lot more wraparound services and more professionals. And so, I think we're kind of at that breaking point as a Commonwealth. So the 3 of us are really working hand in hand, and I'm leading the House efforts on 3 different pieces of legislation for the first time introduced this year. The first is the tuition reimbursement rate, raising it from 75% to 90%. The next is for transportation circuit breaker reimbursement, again from 75 to 90%. And the third piece is around the approved cost threshold. I promise you that is not something I knew as a city councilor. You know, this is that learning process, but the approved cost threshold that triggers reimbursable expenses from the state, currently at about, let's see here, I just wrote it down. So we're currently at, all right, no, I didn't write it down. So we're currently at about, I think, 46,000, and so we have a bill to target and bring that down to about 35,000. So lowering that by about 20 to 25%. And so combined between all three of those bills, we're looking at a price tag just to cover those differences between what we're doing today as a Commonwealth and where I would like us to be is about a little over $200 million annually. So I've introduced that legislation. I can't tell you that we're going to get all of them, but I can tell you that we have a lot of traction right now. I've gotten 14 phone calls today from legislators who are saying, how can I help? We've got to do something. And again, I've hearing equally from urban and rural and regional school districts alike. So we're all in the same boat here. And then not to mention the backhole and pothole account that we'd be looking to establish to help municipalities with this year. So we have legislation. We're going to be also championing amendments as part of the budget and during any supplemental budget as well. So you'll see our names repeatedly attached to both legislation and budget amendments to try to get at these issues. Again, I can never make a promise that a piece of legislation or a budgetary movement will be successful, but I can promise you that we're going to be fighting tooth and nail every step of the way to really try to get at those special education costs that you're experiencing.
And I do just want to add one point to kind of show how we're trying to put our money where our mouth is in regards to the mental health crisis. And I think it affects every part of our society, whether it's kids in school or seniors. We've got a boarding crisis at Leominster High School. There is a dearth Leominster Hospital. We have a dearth of outpatient services available and long wait lists for people to access services. In December of 2021, we passed a bill and got it signed by the governor that committed $122 million to loan repayments and scholarships to build the mental health workforce of the future, right, to address those workforce shortages that are a critical part of why we can't meet the need in our communities and provide people who need treatment and services with the resources that they need. And we also committed nearly $300 million to rate increases to reimburse those providers. I think what we see is that a lot of the people who are suffering from mental illness or seeking mental health treatment are public payers. And so when our providers treat this population, they're losing money. And so you're not going to be able to build a system that provides those services, the system that we need, if you're asking providers to lose money. So it's building the workforce. It's really, it's deliberately increasing reimbursement rates through our public pay systems. And I think, I'm hopeful we pass the bill at the end of this session to mandate commercial insurance providers cover a mental health wellness exam every year. So it's an intractable problem. There are no silver bullets, but we are directing investments and we are directing a change in the law to address something we know is affecting every part of our community.
And along those same lines, I'll use this opportunity to plug the implementation of the 988 hotline in Massachusetts for those experiencing a behavioral and mental health crisis. Anywhere in the state, you call 988. It'll put you to a call center staffed 24 hours a day to help triage and set up appointments, the point of intake, from helping you in the middle of a crisis to, can we get you to be seen 2 weeks from Tuesday at a time in a place that's convenient for you. We have a lot of work to do to continue to build out those services and the ability to accommodate increased demand. But I think we've come a long way and we have a long way to go.
Representative Scarsdale?
I just wanted to say, Madam Chair, your concern about the unfunded mandate, I think we really take that to heart. I saw that very clearly during my time on the select board, and I think especially for smaller towns, like there's no place else to go to get the money if you're being told you have to do X, and the way you're going to get to X is either by cutting services or by continuing to, defray maintenance cost on something, kick it down the road to buy a capital need that, like make your plow go through another winter. So we really do take that to heart. There's just no place in the budget to find these, actions. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I want to turn now to Evan, Mr. Waters.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us again. It's nice to see two of you, and welcome, Ms. Scarsdale. Congratulations. As the Finance Committee is technically in session, I would invite any of the members. We have 4 other members in the audience. If there are other questions that pop up as a result of the discussion, please feel free to add into your conversations as well. I also sent our thoughts ahead of time and a couple of questions to try to get into. From the financial standpoint, obviously, we're not looking at the larger picture. We're looking at the more granular side of things. So we are delving into the formula area of Chapter 70 of Chapter 90 of the whole 40B issue as well. And you could take it into the assessments and all of that stuff as well. Do you have plans, I suppose, or are there plans within on Beacon Hill itself to get into reassessment of these formulas that have been in place for years, if not decades at this point, where our society has changed enough at this point that perhaps they are antiquated and they do need to be reassessed at this point potentially? So the first question is just, is there a charge at this point to kind of reinvestigate any of those? The second one, Senator Cronin, you already mentioned a little bit, is the millionaire's tax. And the idea basically is we've passed it as a Commonwealth, and I think the community would like to know, how is this going to directly affect Lunenburg schools, Lunenburg roads? I know it's probably a little bit too early to tell, but at this point, do we have any sort of an idea as to how that's going to be pushed directly towards us as a community rather than as a statewide issue? And the last one sort of addresses what the school committee chair was just mentioning about the unfunded mandates, and that's the idea of, and I'm not quite sure if this exists yet, but is there any reason or any ability to set up an advocacy group for the smaller communities, either in north central Massachusetts or in just the rural communities in general, to champion a caucus for the purpose of pushing out against the larger communities in the Commonwealth that have much more sway, whereas we are a small town in a very large district, I suppose, or a large state. And coming together as a group of towns or a group of delegates, I think would certainly give us a lot more pull or push. So that was where the quick 3 that we came up with in this short amount of time that we have as well. So thank you.
So with regards to the formula funding, I'll start first with Chapter 70, and it's not the answer you're looking for, but it's the answer I'll give because I'm not going to kick this can down the road and promise you something that I don't think would be a realistic impression. It took 15 years for the Commonwealth to legislate Chapter 70. It was an arduous process, a highly deliberative one. And it involved a 5-year commission and study to really set the new foundational level approach of what school funding would look like for the future. And then even after that, it took about another 3 or 4 years for the legislature and the administration to iron out what that would look like in practice. I don't think there's any appetite. I don't think as with any formula, no one is happy. Everybody feels like they're getting the short end of the stick, but I feel like everybody or most on Beacon Hill feel like, yeah, we're not at a point where there's appetite or momentum enough to be able to go back out so shortly after the implementation of the first. And that's why I think we're starting to see things like, trying to address some of the specific areas like special education reimbursement. And I think that's where the conversation is probably best had, is where are the aspects of Student Opportunity Act and Chapter 70 not addressing the needs, and how can we best try to address them and be kind of one-off or small cumulative areas. With regards to Chapter 90, I think the opposite is true. I think this is a formula that has really gone largely unupdated since the 1970s. I've dug in on this. I have 2 communities. The other one is Fitchburg, and
One has good roads and one does not.
yeah. So, it's nice to be able to say one of my communities has a fantastic infrastructure system, but I realize the funding never goes far enough, and you have to continue to update. And the reality is, Chapter 90 is not really working for anybody at this point. And so I think there is an appetite. The caution here is always, as I said earlier, of I don't think anyone ever feels like the formula works in their benefit. You talk to Boston, they feel like, you know, we have a fifth of the state's population. Like, where's our money? And you talk to, you know, the town of 400 people, and they'll tell you, you know, what is it again? What chapter? Because we haven't seen a dollar from it. So I think the reality is we have a lot of work to do to tinker with Chapter 90. I'm proposing alongside Senator Cronin and Rep. Scarsdale a complete overhaul of the entire system, scrapping the current formula completely and reinstituting, looking at what the need is, not just basing it off of every year we'll allocate 200 million and we'll figure out how we split it, because 200 million doesn't go as far as it used to in the year 2000. It used to pave about 3 miles of road. Today it paves about a single million a mile of road costs about a little more than $1 million, as high as 1.4 million, depending on which DPW director you talk to. So, you know, the funding just doesn't go as far as it used to. So we look a lot at need instead of the average life expectancy of a road is about 30 years. So every, you know, 3.3% of every municipality's roads need to be repaved every year in order to keep up with that. So we look at how do we fund a formula that looks at an average of 3.3% of every municipality's roads with an additional allocation of 2% of every state-owned municipal road, state-numbered municipally owned road, and then creating a municipal match program that really incentivizes municipalities to also invest in this area like Lunenburg did. I think you're one of kind of the shining examples of communities that really stepped up to the plate to address infrastructure challenges. And my contention is the state should have been there to match you. And so devised using the Chapter 70 part of the formula that I think a lot of people do like, the aggregate wealth calculator that really targets of how much can a community afford. What Newton can afford, Lunenburg probably can't. And so, and I think, you know, I'm being facetious there, I think we know you can't. And so how do we figure out what that formula looks like for a match? And so I proposed a new look at this. Again, it's one of about a dozen different ideas on how Chapter 90 could be reconstituted, but I can tell you that across the board, I think there's some real appetite across legislative leadership. Can we fall and rally around one specific new formula over the next 2 years? It's the $1 million question, because everybody's going to want to see that they don't lose anything and that they gain something. And that means we're going to have to spend a whole lot more money on Chapter 90. So there's an appetite, there's a need, and now it's about making sure that we can get a commonality across the board. Hope that addresses the question.
All right, we are getting a little short on time here. So I want to open to any member first from the school committee. I see Mr. Leighton, well, I saw Mr. Leighton. Okay, any member of the school committee or finance committee that have any remaining questions for the delegation that's here? All right, we are going to have a public comment session soon, but before that, are there any members of the public who have any questions for the delegation that's here this evening? Okay. So I want to extend a thank you for being here this evening. I know that normally we do this a month sooner, but I think we got some good feedback from you, Mike, about the challenges of coming in new and having to meet with Lunenburg so quickly. and so I know with having Representative Scarsdale sworn on, we wanted to delay this meeting a little bit more so that way we weren't hitting you in your first week on the job. So the sixth week, you know. Is good. But I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Again, we will get back to you next week with our finalized list of priorities based on this conversation tonight and what's been already kind of presented. And I want to turn it to you to any kind of final remarks as well.
I'll just say thank you, and thank you all for serving the town. It's critical, and it's not an easy time to serve, and I'm grateful for everything you do.
I'll reiterate my gratitude to each of you. This is a time where not a lot of folks want to step up and serve local government. Those long hours you're spending, you've all worked a full day, and you'll probably be here long past 9 p.m. You don't do that you don't do that because of the pay. I know that. You do it because you truly love the community that you live in, and you love the residents and businesses that you serve. So thank you for that, and thank you always for your willingness to engage with us, and not only to hear from us, but to teach us something new every time we interact as well. And I just want to thank the two tremendous individuals to my right and left. Senator Cronin has been just a tremendous partner since we took office together a little over 2 years ago. And again, I can't reiterate my excitement and my pleasure of working with newly elected Rep. Scarsdale. And so for the public wondering what Chair Jeffries is talking about there, I kind of vetoed. There's no way we can hold a meeting until we give Rep. Scarsdale an opportunity to actually at least get sworn in and figure out where her desk is in the State House. But she's just been a phenomenal ally and member of the delegation since she's joined. And in a short period of time, she's done amazing things.
I would just echo those comments and say I think it's oftentimes easy to think of this as a thankless job, but certainly from the three of us, and I'm imagining many other people, just thank you so much. It's such important work. Now more than ever, and I think we understand the sacrifices and the commitment that you have to this. And to echo one other point, we are really here to be partners with you. That is why we ran. That is why we're sitting here before you, to be active, committed, and dedicated partners. So I think you have a great delegation here. The two men to my right are amazing, and I'm looking forward to serving with them and working with you all.
All right, thank you again. I will invite you, I know that time, I think you guys have an early morning tomorrow, so I know you have to run pretty soon. I would ask if you have the time and are able to stay through the announcements and the public comments, that would probably be pretty helpful for our residents tonight. I expect that several have come with some comments. All right, so we're going to move into announcements. And so starting with announcements, I do have one update. And again, I know the delegation has an early morning in Boston. So I want to provide an announcement. This is related to the investigation, and just want to give everyone an update here this evening. On January the 17th, at the Select Board meeting at the high school, it was announced that the only way that residents can realize a decrease in assessed value is by going through the abatement process. Members of both the Select Board and the Board of Assessors outlined steps needed to initiate an abatement request, and the Select Board voted to initiate an investigation into how the fiscal year 2023 assessments were derived. On January the 24th, the Select Board voted to commit $150,000 from available ARPA funds to assist the investigation and provide additional support to the Board of Assessors. A public request for proposals, also known as an RFP, was published that solicited professional support from tax assessing firms in the Commonwealth by February the 13th. The deadline was extended to February 22nd, and the town did not receive any responses prior to the deadline. The town manager received a proposal for services after the deadline and met the vendor remotely with Select Board members Jeffries and Franco to review the proposal. Due to public procurement requirements, we're able to contract for up to $10,000 of services and are publishing a new RFP that is due on March the 23rd to cover the remaining balance. The town manager will work this week to bring a vendor under contract, whose firm will be able to begin the inspection and review process with up to 49 parcels starting on March the 18th. If the same firm is awarded the bid under the RFP that is due on March the 23rd, it is estimated that they will be able to inspect 75 to 100 parcels per week. All residents that submitted abatement applications will have their properties inspected, and most inspections will occur on Fridays and Saturdays. All residents will be contacted directly by the company to set up the inspection, first by email, and if there is no response through email, a follow-up will be made by phone. The team of tax assessors all have active experience working for municipalities in the Commonwealth and active as tax assessors and active experience with Vision Camera. The Chair of the Board of Assessors expects scheduling to be prioritized according to when the abatement requests were received, as the date of receipt starts the 90-day clock for the Board of Assessors to make a determination. Scheduling will also prioritize properties where the owner has a tax exemption on record, and then in order of increasing value. The Assessor's Office will work with Kevin Fish, with Assessor Kevin Fish, Select Board Member Lou Franco, and the vendor to coordinate and communicate with residents and coordinate frequent meetings of the Board of Assessors to make determinations on abatement applications. Over the next few weeks, Vice Chair Tom Alonso will conduct historical data analysis on property valuations in town, and Chairman Jeffries, I will work with the town manager to bring qualified tax assessors under contract to assist with the investigation. And with that, we will ask for public comments. And I want to highlight there, I know that the door was open, so I want to highlight a couple things that were just stated, which is that we are working to bring someone under contract to start the inspections of parcels next, on the 18th of March, that we have an RFP that will be due the following Thursday, that if that company is awarded the RFP, their capability is 75 to 100 parcels per week is what they're estimating, what they're proposing. So that is all good news. Residents will also be contacted. Again, highlighting that, residents will be contacted. You can come forward. Residents will be contacted directly by the company to set up the inspection. All right, we're to turn to public comments. Good evening.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if it's all right, would you mind if we called the Finance Committee?
Yeah.
Just real quickly, I would entertain a motion from the Finance Committee to, is there a second? All right, any discussion? Those in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed? All right, at 8:29, Finance Committee is adjourned. Thank you.
And we should have probably paused for a moment to give Carol the time to leave and Evan the time to leave. If you want to just give us a minute. You can let them
Oh, that's all right.
All right. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and.
Sure. June Hudson, 90 Hemlock Drive.
Yes.
At the I'm part of the Lunenburg Lakes Action Committee, and I'd like to read a statement. At the February 21st, 2023 Select Board meeting, Chairperson Jeffries read a prepared statement on the tax assessment investigation. The primary method used in the investigation for that update were interviews by Chairperson Jeffries alone. The Lunenburg Lakes Action Committee would like to respond to quotes made in his update. At 23:18 into the meeting, Chairperson Jeffries said, "Many of the residents elected to serve on the Board of Assessors and all staff hired to work in the Assessor's Office indicated that prior to fiscal year 2023, they believed that residential properties nearest the lakes were undervalued but could not be adjusted due to a lack of sales. Although those interviewed might have believed this, beliefs are irrelevant when there is real data to reveal the facts." The Lunenburg Lakes Action Committee downloaded from the Division of Local Services Gateway public information data for all of Lunenburg single-family home sales from 2017, which is FY18, through 2021, FY23. The facts based on data are very different than speculation and opinions. Here are some of them. 1, each year, valuations on both waterfront and non-waterfront homes were adjusted to meet the requirement of bringing every property to within 90 to 110% of the fair market value. Number 2, valuations for single-family waterfront homes in Lunenburg before FY23 rose an average of 15%, while non-waterfront home valuations rose an average of 9%. So waterfront homes were already going up faster than non-waterfront homes before FY23. Each year, the assessments, number 3, each year, the assessments on both waterfront and non-waterfront homes went up. This would indicate assessors, even before the current one, did their job to appropriately adjust valuations. Number 4, each year, there were both qualified and non-qualified sales. However, over the past 5 years, there were more qualified sales than non-qualified sales. Number 5, Chairperson Jeffries said assessors commented that properties nearest a body of water tend to pass down through families or are sold to family members. The data shows that in the last 5 years, only 6 of 35 non-qualified sales were sold to family members. There are requirements for years when there are not enough sales, like FY23. The Division of Local Services Certification Standards, page 9, which is statistical analysis, says, quote, "The total number of arm's length sales used in the analysis should be at least 2% of all parcels that use class in that use class, or 10 sales in the class." So 2% or 10, whichever number is greater. If insufficient sales exist to meet the applicable requirement in the base calendar year, 24 months of sales for that class must be analyzed and submitted to the BLA for review, time adjusted as needed, unquote. This section is important. If the principal assessor used 24 months of sales to calculate the ASR, the result would have changed the FY23 tax assessment significantly. As the Lunenburg Lakes Action Committee continues to dig into the data behind this year's tax increase, one thing becomes abundantly clear. The overvalue in properties leading to the unfair assessment of lakefront properties falls directly on the lack of experience by the principal assessor. However, the lack of oversight by the Board of Assessors to understand their responsibilities, the methodology, tax implications, and undesired outcome of these assessments does not go unnoticed. Meanwhile, the 429 waterfront property owners are forced to pay their tax bills and wait for abatements while most other classes in town, non-waterfront, condos, commercial, and industrial, all received property tax reductions. To make matters worse, at the recent Board of Assessors meeting, the chairperson said, "This board is restricted from looking at waterfront properties. The abatements will need to be settled in appellate court." The Lunenburg Lakes Action Committee is saddened if the town's strategy is to let the appellate court fix what is clearly a town mistake. It is further upsetting to know other worthwhile causes in this town will go unfunded in the short term, all because one inexperienced person was allowed to make financial decisions for the town without adequate oversight and review by the Board of Assessors and a supervisor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any additional public comments this evening? Yes, Ms. Pease. And then we'll call you next.
Good evening.
Good
Joan
evening.
Pease, and I live at 11 Wintergreen Court in Lunenburg. I value tremendously a small government which allows the public to have an input. I also value that I'm required to give my name and address, because in requiring the speaker to identify themselves, you are making sure that they are a legitimate person who lives in town, and you can verify their participation, their paying of taxes, which gives them a right to have a say. I was concerned when at a past select board meeting, Selectwoman Stroka read an anonymous letter
I did not read it. I did not
into
read it.
the meeting.
Please don't interrupt
Okay.
the speaker.
Yeah. And I was surprised that the chairman allowed it. Because letters are a form of public comment. And as such, they should be required to be identified with both the name and the address of the speaker who is speaking in pen instead of with voice. In addition, I'm willing to bet that that was not the only letter received by the Select Board on this subject. And so to cherry pick a single letter and not read into the record 100% of the identified letters received gives me pause. How problems are handled, and there will be stress, there will be conflict, there will be issues. It is the nature of government. But how they are handled is critically important to the tone of our town, to the way citizens view each other, to how business is conducted. So I have those first two concerns. One, that all comments, whether written or verbal, be identified, the speaker be identified. And two, that if letters are going to be read, that you would read all the letters received on a certain topic into the minutes. My third and final comment about public comment is that at times, and I feel this does not just apply to the select board, I feel this applies to some others I've watched on TV recently, especially the Board of Assessors. At times I feel the public has not viewed it as a comment session. I feel they have viewed it as a time to badger, to get into a dialogue and discuss with the board, whatever board it happens to be, the topic. When the meeting begins, the chairman reads something that says, the agenda lists the topics that will be discussed. Public comment is a time for citizens to have input, not a time to initiate a large discussion. Madam Town Manager, if I may make a suggestion, I think it would be good, since I've seen this happen in many boards, different things about public comment, if maybe the town attorney could offer a workshop to all chairmen of all committees in the town on what to do with anonymous letters, how to read letters into the minutes and not cherry pick, and also how chairmen can control what happens during public comment to avoid badgering of committees or getting into extensive discussions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Spears. Are there any additional public comments? Yes, ma'am.
I have a very small voice. Is that working?
It is.
Yes?
We can hear you. Thank you.
I can't hear her.
Yeah?
No.
Okay. I don't know. I'll try to speak as loudly as I can. My name is Sharon Jordan. I live at 77 Burridge Street. On February the 8th, I attended the Water District Commissioners meeting, and I heard about a plan to develop the 50 acres of open space, open land at 110 Burridge Street, right across the street from me. Since that meeting, the landowners and the developer have circulated a petition to extend the water district boundary and take town water down to 110 Burridge Street. The intent is to build 25 houses plus a separate complex, whatever that is, for 55 plus seniors. That would definitely, I would qualify. They would also build a new road through the property, starting across from my house just about, and exiting at 146 Burridge Street. The developer would pay for the water pipe in the district, and the residents along Burridge Street who are not already in the water district could pay for hooking up their own houses. I heard information presented about that land on February 8th, which did not match what I thought I knew. So I started to do some research, and I would like to share with you what I learned. The owners have a septic service business. They dumped their sewage waste and accepted hazardous industrial waste in a total of 15 pits on 110 Burridge from the 1960s until the DEP stopped them in the 1980s. In October 2004, the cleanup started, but it was stopped the same day because three barrels were found, because 3 buried industrial waste barrels were uncovered. In January of 2005, more barrels were found for a total of 16. It was May of 2005 before the buried industrial waste drums were removed, and June of 2005 when 100 tons of contaminated soil were removed. That waste contaminated 2 of your neighbors' wells on Burridge Street, one of which is mine. It seeped into the bedrock, which started in 2004 and continues today. Additionally, PFAS exceeding the safe limit was discovered at 110 Burridge in December of 2021. The DEP ordered that all wells within 500 feet should be tested for PFAS, but only 2 have been tested. All of this is public record documented by the Department of Environmental Protection. And I have found all of this just in the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's almost 1,000 pages. It was not until 2020 that we, my husband and I, were informed that our well was contaminated and had to be filtered. We were never informed about why that happened. I am very concerned about the disturbance of the soil and the water that will be necessary for this construction, the impact on the nearby wells and soil, and the impact on the brook and the wetlands that are there. Tomorrow, on March the 8th, at 4 p.m., the developer will be at the Water District again, likely to present the petition and ask for a special meeting of the Water District voters. At this special meeting, the Water District voters will be asked to approve extending the Water District boundary so that the developer can bring in the pipe. I am hoping tonight to just put this matter in the public eye, especially members of the Water District who will be asked to vote on this at some future special meeting. If you live in the vicinity, Burridge, Reservoir, Page, Houghton's Mill, Whitetail Crossing, I urge you to attend tomorrow's Water District meeting, 4 p.m. at 496 Mass Ave, which is where the Water District headquarters are located. The commissioners have assured me that they will allow public comment on this tomorrow, so even if you don't live in the Water District, you can participate. And I would like to say that I appreciate how the Water District commissioners have been willing to listen to me. I do live in the Water District, but I never knew that. I did not know that until 4 weeks ago. So I'll be there. I brought a map of the town site, which is this handout here. And it's based on the DEP map of the sewage pits, the town map, and what I heard at the February 8th meeting. I am sure there is much more information to come. This has just been me looking this up. My hope is the Water District will decide to hold the special meeting at least 6 months from now, and that there will be a public meeting long before the date of the actual special meeting where all Lunenburg voters can be informed and ask questions. The date of the special meeting may be decided tomorrow. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments from the public? Did you have a question, Mr. Franklin?
I did, actually.
Ms. Jordan?
Ms. Jordan, if I could ask you a question, or if anybody else knows the answer. Does the Water District...
She doesn't know. He's asking you a question. I'm so sorry.
All right. Maybe somebody else can answer the question, too, but does the Water District facilitate participation remotely?
I have no idea.
Their meetings have been on Facebook Live because they're being covered by PAC. I do not know if they have Zoom meetings. I have not looked at their agenda.
I'm sorry, I don't know. Are there other questions that you might
Yeah, I
have?
was only asking you or anyone else that has the answer, if the water district meetings, if they facilitate participation via Zoom like we do.
I wish I could answer that for you. I don't know. I'm just used to showing up, and I'm retired, so I could be there.
Joan
I've
Pease.
gone to several of the water district meetings in the last year, and none of them have had a Zoom link or a Zoom participation.
So that was away from the mic, and the answer there was that, that the water district does not have experiences, that they have not had that capability previously.
I know that the meetings are recorded, and a couple of days later, they are posted on the Lunenburg Cable Access TV.
Okay.
Okay, but I think it's absolutely critical that the public know, because this is an extremely important announcement that you're making here, that they're not going to be able to find, like, if they think they're getting on to participate remotely tomorrow at 4 o'clock, they can't find out at 3:30 tomorrow that there's no Zoom link for them to participate. They need to plan for being there personally.
Right.
So,
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Yep.
Are there other questions? I'm sorry, I just hadn't heard you.
Nope, it was just that one. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Ms.
Thank you.
Jordan. All right, any additional public comments this evening?
Hi, my name is Dave McDonald, 155 Island Road, and I'm a proud member of the Lunenburg Lake Action Committee. I'm here tonight for a couple of things. One is to get things straight. On a business note, I have a question for a town manager. That question is there a deadline for additional paperwork to be submitted into the abatement forms?
Deadline for additional
Paperwork to be submitted into the
I'm
abatement
not
forms?
aware of one. That would be a question that I'd direct to the Board of Assessors.
Okay, so you don't know? Okay. As a member of the Lunenburg Lakes Action Committee, I want to make one thing perfectly clear to all you guys. There is no lawsuit going against Lunenburg. For people to say that are insane. There is no lawsuit from us. We did hire an attorney. The reason why we hired an attorney is because we get no information. Nothing. Nothing. That's irresponsible. That's why the tensions are getting high with the people sitting behind me. I don't know how many emails you've gotten. I know you've gotten a lot about the data that people are giving you, worksheets, Lake Action. In fact, one was read tonight. Nothing. That's disrespectful to these people sitting here. That's the question I have for you all. How come we're not getting any information? And again, you don't have to answer. Sometimes silence tells it all. The other thing I want to mention is Joanna Bellotta made a comment about people are going to come and vote no on everything. That man right there, Joe Bellotta, ran the town for a lot of years. He knows how a lot of things work. I lived in town for 20-something years. A lot of you lived here for something years. She's right. If people don't get answers, they will come. Not because of me, not because of the Lake Association, because they care. They want to know. So they're going to come to town meeting, as they did here in this room. You had 400-plus people that had to leave, or 600 people at the high school that had to leave. That tells you something. That wasn't brought on by anybody. That was brought on because people cared. So I want to make that clear. The other thing I have, and it's kind of funny, Mr. Jeffries, you said that to the representatives, you're looking for tax relief in this town. We are too. But I guess to be get tax relief, you got to have a business like Walmart or Unitel. I mean, that's how you get tax relief, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to open up a store. You're not looking at this fairly at all. And that's all I care about, is it's done fairly. If our taxes are what they are, then fine, tell us what they're going to be. But don't play this dog and pony show, and that's what you guys are doing. And you did bring a letter into the record that had nothing to do, and my name was in that letter, by the way.
I did not say your name.
No.
Please don't respond to Mr.
Okay.
McDonald.
You introduced that letter. In fact, is there a Holly Sullivan here? Oh, okay, so you introduced that letter. Why would you do that? And you allowed it. That should have been stopped right off the bat. You all knew it. Now, have you gotten any other letters from me? I know you have. Did you read them into the record? No. Just something because about Mr. Alonzo. And he's friends with me. That is, I would not want to serve on a board with you or with you, because you guys are just backstabbing each other. That's not the way it works in this town. So a couple of things I just want to say is 3 weeks ago.
I think you're almost at time here,
Yeah, I
Mr.
know,
McDonald.
but I got a couple more minutes.
No, you don't. We're at time here, Mr.
I
McDonald.
think that's very disrespectful, Mr.
All right,
Wright.
thank you, Mr. McDonald, for your comments today.
So you're saying no,
I'm saying no. Thank you
thought
for your
you
time
would.
today, Mr. McDonald.
but you're running a sham investigation.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments this evening? Mr. Menard.
Good evening. Chris Menard, 672 Page Street. First of all, I would like to thank all of you. It's a difficult situation you're dealing with. I also have some issues that are brought up anonymously because people don't always have the voice, right? There's marginalized people in town. They don't feel comfortable speaking on it. It's not related to tax, but it is related to the Flat Hill runoff issues that we toured last year. And what I would ask is that, can we get an update on a upcoming agenda for where we stand relative to that topic? Several people have asked me to come forward with that. That's all I had. Thank you again.
Thank you. Are there any additional public comments here? All right. Mr. Luck.
Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. First, I'd like a small disclaimer here for the record. In all my comments and communications regarding to the 23 tax assessment in the past and tonight, and likely in the future, I've been solely speaking on my own behalf. Further, I'd like to, I'm unaware of any discussion or intent to sue the town by anyone. And in fact, I do not encourage or would support such an effort. That would only cost the town and people money. So anyone who thinks that I know of any suits in process, that's just not correct. Regarding comment, I will keep it uncharacteristically short in the hopes that it's heard and acted on by this board, maybe as early as this evening. When the select board established the investigation team, I do not believe it was your intention to obstruct the public's access to information. I am confident in the people on that board that I know that that was not your intention. Nor was it your intention to stop the principal assessor from performing his responsibilities of his job description. However, this is exactly what's happening. To make what I believe to be your good intentions crystal clear to the community and get us back on a positive and cooperative track, which clearly we need, I request that after the investigations update this evening, that the select board discuss the ongoing issues and consider making a motion to direct the investigation team and the town manager to cease any effort to obstruct the flow of information between the principal assessor and the public, consistent with the principal assessor's job description. I further would request that you immediately schedule an open public workshop with the principal assessor to determine exactly what the process was that established the 135% increase in the land assessment across all the lake properties, as well, and also to determine what the results would have been if all 24 months of qualified sales had been used in the analysis as was required by the DOR, which was read to you earlier, so that saves some of my time. That process wasn't right. So I'm asking you to immediately, and I know at least one of your team agrees, that there's no reason to not dig into how the process ran. We don't need an outside consultant to sit down. We need a couple smart people, which I think we have sitting on that stage, to go through with the assessor and see what was the process, what were the calculations, what were the assumptions, how was it calculated to get from 8 qualified sales, not the 8 plus 5 that should have been used, but how to get from there to 135%. It's the most important issue, and that's the thing that's killing everybody. So please, get that, but do it in public so the public can also learn from that. Okay, I have a handout that I'll give you with this in it, but I would like to share some excerpts from the principal assessor's job description, which is what has been, I think, put on hold, violated by, I can't imagine anyone but his supervisor, the town manager. Under his essential functions, he's supposed to provide information and explanation to taxpayers regarding how the tax amount was derived. Pretty important at this time, and that's what we're looking for, and we keep being told I'm not allowed to answer any questions because I've been directed so, sometimes by the team, the inspection team, sometimes by the town manager. Also in the essential functions, he's supposed to provides assessing information to the public and handles the more difficult customer service requests, which this certainly qualifies as pretty difficult requests. Finally, in his essential functions, he's supposed to provide information in person, on the telephone, email, or via written correspondence to the property owners and others regarding the municipality's assessment policies and procedures and the determination of the specific values, tax assessments, abatements, and exemptions. So 3 places in the essential things that we're supposed to be able to ask the assessor and get information on exactly what we've been asking for and exactly what we've been told by him he is not allowed to tell us. Please, tonight, put an end to that gag order, which is violating his job. So please, Miss Supervisor, please let him do his job and let him service the community and share information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luck. Are there any additional public comments this evening from the public? All right, seeing none. From the board, do we have any public comments from the board?
No.
And then we're going to move into the rest of our agenda here. Any public comments from the board? Mr. Franco, Mr. Alonso?
I have none.
I do. So what the previous speaker has asked for has been something I asked for from the beginning, and I will continue to ask for, which is I want to know, in order to determine what, if anything, went wrong, I need to know how the numbers were derived. You know, this is the simplest of requests. So I don't understand why there hasn't been, I was amazed. I turned to the town manager, I turned to the chairman at the January 17th meeting when the principal assessor was there without any handouts, without any projections, without any slides, without anything, and just talked. I thought we were going to get some explanation, but okay, that was the first meeting. But here we are now, 6 weeks removed from that, and I still, as a member of the investigation team, haven't gotten a report or sit down of how the numbers were done from the beginning to the end. The NTSB, when they have like train derailments like happened in Ohio, you start and you look at all the data, like what happened to get here? We haven't gotten that. And so again, I will ask for that. I will also ask for the same data that I've asked for from almost day one, maybe not day one, week one, which is I still don't have the land assessed values and the building assessed values from at least 2019, which would be the prior 5-year review. And that is also something I've requested from the beginning. As a member of this board, I can only imagine what people in the audience are saying who aren't elected officials, and I can't get the data. So again, I will reiterate, I don't care at this point. I will say publicly, I don't care what it takes for somebody in the proper board or department to get the data. I want the data supplied so we can review it. There is no investigative review or historical data review without the data. So I will ask for that again. Lastly, I would caution the board that, I don't know in recent times of anybody who got cut off in a public comment unless they were being belligerent or they were being personally insulting to people on this board, and to say that their time is up when clearly that was not true, when other people used more time, sets a really bad precedent and I think does nothing. While I may not agree with all the comments that were made by the speaker, and I didn't, I think their ability to speak them is an important one, and I think it goes to further erode a trust that I think this board needs to have with the rest of the town. Thank you.
I will offer
I can supply the data for
2016 and 2018.
All right.
It's on the town website, I found.
Thank you, Thank you, Bill. I want to offer a public comment as well, and I understand, you know, one of the things that's part of running for office is that we are always subject to criticism from the public and from one another, and that's just part of the job. And you know, one thing that we do not allow, and we have received several anonymous letters, and we have not read any of them into the record. I have responded to just about everyone who sent me an email, with some exceptions, and to the person who submitted the anonymous letter that Selectwoman Stroker referenced, I also sent them a reply, and it was really clear, and it said, look, if you'd like your letter to be read into the record, you need to provide your name and address. And that's a requirement for all things to be read in the public, to be read into the record, or for the board to even consider the comments that are made. That resident chose to respond and identify that they weren't interested in doing that, and so that letter was not read into the record. It's not appropriate. However, we know we're all subject to criticism, and I'm no exception. You know, some of this, and I've mentioned this before, I mean, if it's not abundantly clear, you know, me and one individual had a falling out last year. And so some of this stuff, you know, has been rather ridiculous, in my opinion, in terms of the phraseology that's directed this way. You know, we all are in this role, and the idea is that we have to have thick skin because it's not about us. It's not about me. I know that. I understand that, and I accept that. That it's not about me, it's about the community and the community that we're all here to serve. And so we need to be able to take it on the chin when the public comes to us with harsh comments, because it's part of the job. And I accept it. I hear everything that's said. You know, I'm not immune, you know, to not having opinions or feelings about things. But, you know, every community has every town in this Commonwealth has a select board or some variation of an executive board. And in this case, you know, I happen to be elected and happen to be on it. And so there's a duty that we have to uphold. I have held my own personal opinions about several things, but I want to share a couple of them. I want to share a couple more. The purpose of an investigation is and has been to understand how we got to this point. The purpose of the updates are to give the public information on information that has been uncovered or identified. So when there are statements that are related to interviews, I'll tell you the feeling on my side is it's probably better not to report then on interviews if it's going to be twisted and turned into a different thing. But I think in full transparency that we have a duty and a responsibility to give you the updates that we're getting. And it's incomplete information. It's a piece of a puzzle. It's part of a process. It's giving you information as we're walking through and going through something. We can't come to any conclusions. Now, there has been a false belief out there that somehow in this process we're going to be able to vote to undo all of the assessments that have been done. And as we identified on January the 17th, the state gives a very clear process. And it says that there's an abatement process and that people have to walk through the abatement process. So the investigation is separate from that, in which we are trying to uncover, again, the things that have happened. We've identified that we have had issues with data, that we do not have all the information that we're looking for, that a lot more needs to happen. A lot more needs to happen. Investigations take time. They take time. I can understand that on the other side of this, you want the information and you want it now. And you want it now. And what we need to do is be methodical in our approach, be thorough in our approach, and also understand that there is that urgency out there. Please trust, if there was a way for us to just do an assessment all over again, I would be on that in a heartbeat, because all this headache is not worth it if we can just do that. That's pretty obvious. I have a full-time job like everybody else, and this has been all-consuming. Now, I'm not here to bitch and moan and complain. I'm just letting you know this has been consuming. And so if there was a way to go about this differently, we would have done it. None of us are here are getting paid. We're here because this is something that we're elected to do, and we actually care, as we've said several times. I can't stop the onslaught. I can't stop the feelings that people have that they've been genuinely screwed. However, the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, has nothing to do with the assessments that any of you guys received. We have nothing to do with it. So our role here is to try to be helpful to get us beyond this. I saw that meeting of the Board of Assessors. It was as awful as all of you thought it was. So we are trying to get engaged here by saying to the Board of Assessors, multiple conversations, multiple meetings, you gotta run better meetings. You need to run better meetings. You need to give the public better information. Of course, we're saying these things behind the scenes, but it's an elected board that we have no authority over at all. At all. They are our peers. And so some of this stuff, I get it. It's easy to be angry. It's harder to actually get something done. So what I'm saying is we have 11 vacancies in our town. We have a caucus coming up on the 27th. We need another person to sit on this board. Volunteer. Volunteer. That's how you help. We're all a community together. This isn't Michael Ray's show. This isn't Heather Ray's show. That's not what's going on over here. We're all in a community together. So we have to find within ourselves the skills and abilities that we bring to the table and bring them to the table. Instead of having this oppositional environment of working against one another, we need to be working together. That there's obviously things that you're able to do. Good data, we're taking that data. We're looking at that data. Right? So if you have some stuff, keep sending it. I'm not saying don't. But the anger and the frustration that's being directed towards this board for trying to help our residents do the right thing is completely unnecessary. So that's the opinion that I have in all of this. Now, I know I'm getting a little heated here. I know I'm pretty upset because this is upsetting. People in our town are really angry right now. People are really hurting right now. People are really, really, really hurting. So let's not add to the hurt. Let's try to work together to find some solutions. All right, I need to take a break. So we're going to take a 2-minute pause here, and then we're going to pick up the rest of the agenda. have to,
Can we take it anymore? It's a real quick one.
yeah, we're not going to take any more public comments tonight. We will have them at the very end of the agenda, however. All right, so we're going to pick up on the rest of the agenda. Do we have any communications from other boards? All right, interviews, appointments, reappointments, and resignations to the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll start with the first appointment is for the civil traffic member, Andrew Fields. And I'll read a letter from the police chief. Dear Ms. Lemieux, as we prepare for the upcoming detail season, we have received application for an additional candidate for the civilian traffic member unit. The candidate is Andrew Fields, who retired as a sergeant from the Department of Corrections in 2021. Sergeant Fields retired after 20 years of dedicated service at MCI Shirley. Sergeant Fields retired in good standing and meets all of the requirements to become a member of the unit. All of the required paperwork has been submitted to the HR Director, Julie Beliveau. I respectfully request that Andrew Fields be appointed to the Civil Traffic Unit effective March 8th. So I'm asking the board to ratify this appointment tonight.
All right. Any questions for the town manager?
None.
All right, is there a motion to ratify?
Move that we ratify the town manager's appointment of Andrew Fields as the civilian traffic member.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion passes unanimously. All right, to the town manager.
The next appointment we're going to table until the next meeting, the rec director, Angela Clement. This needs to go before the personnel committee first before coming back to the board. So the third appointment on the agenda was for the tax collector principal clerk, Erin Mahoney. And I'm asking the board to ratify Erin tonight for this position. This position a vacancy was created when Alicia Aquino resigned recently. And we received approximately 8 applications after it was posted, and the finance director, treasurer collector, and HR director conducted interviews with 6 of the applicants, and Erin was chosen as the top candidate. And I'm asking to appoint her based on her 22 years of progressive experience in the banking industry. She served from a teller, financial service representative, to a loan administrator, member support assistant, to collections and loan servicing supervisor. So I know that the help is needed downstairs. This is a very busy time for the tax collector's office.
All right. Is there a motion to ratify?
Move to ratify the town manager's appointment of Erin Mahoney as the tax collector principal clerk.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion passes unanimously.
I just want to add just an announcement of other appointment that was made recently for the sewer business manager. That's an appointment through the town charter process. I make the appointment, and that's ratified by the sewer commission. So Paula Bertram was appointed and ratified at the last sewer commission meeting, and she'll begin in that position on March 13th. And so it will be a slight overlap before Barb LaFleur retires. And but they've been working alongside each other for a while now, for the last year. So happy to make that announcement. The fire chief has appointed Andrew Bolton to fill the full-time vacancy that was created by Jim Ricci retiring. So we're happy to bring Andrew on board. He is a paramedic already, so will not require sending anyone to school, so he can start immediately as a paramedic. So that's the only other announcements I have to make on that.
All right. Thank you. All right, going to old business. We have an update on our goals.
I'm assuming there's no town manager report?
There is not tonight. I will have probably a lengthy one next meeting.
For the goal update, yeah, let's hit it. All right, so update on our goals. So would you like to start to the town manager?
I can start. I put an update memo together for the board. I'll just open that. So goal number 1 was a continuation of the goal to redevelop and reuse 925 Mass Ave, with action 1 that the town manager will perform all necessary tasks associated with the funding from the targeted brownfield assessment funding that is expected by late summer. So that project is moving forward with the EPA. They recently had a site visit last week, and everything went well. They are including the canopy in the removal of all the underground tanks as it is attached to those fuel tanks there's nothing in those fuel tanks, but as part of the removal process. The work is expected to commence in May, and hopefully they're saying end of fiscal year will be done. And so we're moving forward on that. The other action associated with that goal is to identify the best method of disposition of the property by working with the appropriate town boards and work with the treasurer collector, an auction company if property will be auctioned, or put together an IFB, RFP if property will be disposed of. So after a recent meeting I had with Mass Development in the last couple of months, we discussed all their programs. One of their programs is the Real Estate Services Technical Assistance Program, which they offer help with drafting RFPs for this type of service. So I will be applying for that before the end of the fiscal year to get technical assistance from Mass Development on our RFP. And that's through, they have a new, it's called the One Stop for Growth portal for all their various programs for submitting applications. So it's supposed to be more of a streamlined approach for submittal. Goal number 2 was long-term planning, with the objective to enhance the town's long-term planning in the areas of capital assets, staffing, and infrastructure plans. Action 1 for capital planning addresses asset inventory lists and expected replacement of vehicles, equipment, and infrastructure, buildings and grounds and capital planning documents, and utilizing a platform that will create greater transparency during the capital planning process. My previous update, I already updated the board that we've begun utilizing ClearGov, which is our budget platform for capital planning. So that this was the first year of implementing that. So that's to, I think, create greater transparency about all the projects because it has all that data that departments have submitted. So those forms were utilized during the capital planning process. And we do have an inventory list of all our vehicles and equipment, and separate lists for bridges that are identified through Mass DOT through their bridge inspection reports. The second action related to that is the long-term staffing. That action item is in progress. So I have been, as I updated the board last time, talking to department heads about their long-term needs, and that was during the budget process as well, of what staffing needs they need in the next 5 years going out. For roads and bridges, to work with the DPW director to update the current pavement management plan and create a similar plan for large culverts and bridges. As the board knows, because the DPW director gave his presentation last week, the pavement management plan has been updated. Beta Group did that work, and that was all presented on the 28th. And we received an estimate of $31,000 from a company that specializes in bridge culvert management plans that the DPW director plans on applying for a grant for that work. So that would be another great capital planning tool that we could use for addressing all our bridges and culverts. Goal number 3 was for employee recruitment, recognition, and retention. The objective to establish new employee recruitment methods, create formal recognition plan, and strategies of retention. With action 1, with recruitment, to assess the current recruitment methods and establish new employee recruitment strategies. Work with area towns, cities on regional approach to recruitment. So I previously noted that I have approached other towns and they are open to a regional approach to recruitment. The design, second under that action item, is design job postings that market the town and the position to attract greater pool of applicants. The assistant town manager has drafted a template of what I call a more flashy ad for positions, and also has played around with doing a QR, which is a quick response code for advertising. So if this was posted in different areas, instead of the lengthy posting with all the verbiage, it would just be a QR code so people could scan with their phone to get information on that job posting. So as you know, we have multiple job vacancies, so that would be a good approach to address all those different vacancies in one blip. And that third item under the recruitment is to attend college job fairs and explore internship program. And I previously updated the board that I have reached out to Suffolk University about a job shadowing program, but I have no new updates tonight for that. Second action under that is create a formal recognition plan. I have no update on that at the moment, but I do plan to have something hopefully by the next update on the goals, as well as an employee appreciation event, awards for years of service for employees for that as well. Third action item under that was retention, to survey department heads and staff on topics for training, conduct quarterly professional development training schedule. I have surveyed department heads at the department head meetings. The one request I did get was from the police chief regarding a training. Due to our budget, we wouldn't be able to do the training that he was looking to do. It's thousands of dollars that we did not have available in the budget. My budget proposal for next year does have an increased amount for training. I do think we need to prioritize that among staff. That's definitely a need. We did have a Worcester County Retirement Benefit Seminar for employees on November 7th. So that was very well attended by employees. And I'm currently working with Suzer IT on a training for staff and committee and board members for Microsoft Office 365. And lastly, to conduct an employee survey to assess job satisfaction, and based on the results, create an action plan. This item was funded at the special town meeting in the fall, and we engaged with Culture Amp after the special town meeting and developed the survey based on the provided templates, and it was sent out and it closed in February, a couple weeks ago. The HR director and I had a meeting with our client services manager last week, and we need to review all the results and break it down by department, and my plan is to meet with each department head individually to review the results. Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
No questions. All right, let's go through the select board goals. So the first goal was to continue to pursue, first objective is to continue to pursue a project acceptable to the town regarding the property and building at 30 School Street. First action being to oversee the hazardous material abatement and demolition of the old primary school, and then through weekly updates and timeline review with the town manager. Action 2, seeking public engagement to review and evaluate landscaping architect plans. Action 3, creating a working title that provides a clear, unique purpose and benefit to residents. And Action 4, to communicate funding sources distinct from Marshall Park. I think that we are moving forward with the abatement and demolition of the primary school, and that the other actions I know have been delayed in part because of our focus over these last couple of months. Work with the town manager. Objective number 2 is to work with the town manager and finance director to establish a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption or abatement. And so the first action was to discuss the authority allowing us to pursue this program, evaluate examples of how other towns have already adopted similar programs, and Selectman Franco and Selectman Alonso both took point in that. And then discussing and determining the eligibility criteria for seniors to be able to qualify and participate in the program. And as announced last week, that was coordinated with the town manager, the principal assessor, and the finance director, Karen. And then third action is to work with the town manager, well, I already said that, and go through the models. All right, fourth action is to hold public hearings when necessary, but at least one, to present the proposal and to get feedback from the public, which we expect to occur in the coming month or so. And then the fifth action is to prepare a town meeting warrant article detailing the final proposals for town consideration, and that also I expect to occur within the next month or so. And then our other objective was to review select board, third objective was to review select board bylaws and propose updates for the 2023 annual town meeting. So we, first action was to review select board policies and procedures, which we have done. The second action is to review all select board bylaws and prepare modification updates to improve clarity and consistency with the town charter. I believe we had that scheduled for January the 17th, and it has been, for obvious reasons, pushed. The third action, to hold public hearing to present the proposal and get feedback from the public. And the fourth action, to prepare a town meeting warrant article when ready, detailing the final proposal for town consideration. So it seems as if we are probably going to be able to fully accomplish objective number 1, objective number 2, and we will likely be halfway through objective number 3 unless we can find some more time.
Mr. Chair, on goal number 2, I would hope that, and I'll work with Mr. Franco and the town manager as needed to make sure we get a placeholder on the warrant, so it's on there before the warrant closes.
I think you update.
Yeah, can I give an update on that?
Sure.
So having presented the basic framework last week, and although we didn't take a vote on that framework, the sentiment, the clear sentiment of this board was to proceed and start drafting something up. So I did take a first shot at drafting that, and got it to town council earlier today for him to now go through and refine it. And then, so hopefully what we have before us next week is something to discuss and put on the warrant. So,
Right, and maybe just to further add, it was based on Wayland, right?
Wakefield. Yes, Wakefield.
Wakefield's home rule petition, but with all the criteria as outlined in
Yeah.
Mr. Franco's.
Yeah, so that's right. I mean, essentially not all it did, but it was on that model, Wakefield, and then that framework and all those bullets that we discussed last week were sort of woven into that framework,
Yeah.
essentially. So, but I put forth a couple of questions to town council too, as to whether or not, because I saw the document that we discussed last week as sort of the more plain language intent of what we want to happen. And then in attempting to weave it into a warrant article format, I just want to make sure that intent is properly expressed in the language, because I clearly couldn't put, examples, and we had to whittle it down to something manageable and put, succinctly by my standards, which is to take 800 words and bring it down to 400. No, but you know what I mean, to bring it down to 3 or 4 or 5 sentences. So
The benefit of starting with the Wakefield's model is it's already gone through muster through the legislature, so that I think will,
Yep.
instead of starting from scratch, so.
Sure, yeah, and the more it can look like that, the better, although with some of the specifics altered, of course. Like, they do not have a 1% cap, they do not have a cap of 1% on the levy, in fact, I didn't see any models like that, did they? So that's something that we came up with, and so there it is. That's where it is. We're down on the wire, but I think we're going to have a warrant, or, I mean, we're going to have something here to discuss next week. Hopefully, we vote to put it on the warrant, at least as a placeholder, and then fix it up if we need to.
Okay. Any other comments, discussions related to the town manager or select board goals? Discussion on fiscal year 2024 budget, capital plan, annual town meeting warrant articles.
All right, so I have provided the documents that I presented at the Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, and specifically changes made since the preliminary budget presentation. So that includes the governor's budget that was announced on February 23rd. And so as you are aware, the preliminary budget that I presented mid-February was level funded from the FY23 amounts. So there's slight changes, and like I noted tonight with the discussion with our delegation, is overall our impact, given it's approximately 40,000 for local aid increase. And on the expenditure side, we had reductions on our assessments and choice and charter numbers and offset numbers. So overall, the impact was 235,000 in additional aid, and clearly insufficient from, if you base it on previous years, what we received in local aid. The other updates include.
What is it as a percentage? Do you happen to know what the percentage increase is?
I did calculate that, but.
The numbers start getting high enough, 250,000
Yeah.
without any reference of percent means nothing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not nothing, but it's hard to really put a finger on it.
I might have wrote it down. Did not write it
Okay.
down, so, but I can calculate that for you.
Yep.
The other adjustments made to the preliminary budget were to remove the special purpose stabilization funds. That was a revenue source for 3 of the capital items that are now being funded through the ARPA funding. So that total was $986,000 that originally in the budget was coming from the special purpose stabilization towards the capital plan, can be removed. That does not change. I'll get further into the capital plan and updates, but so that's amount was removed on the revenue side, as well as on the expenditure side for those capital items. On the expenditure side, there was the change in health insurance because we received our actual rate renewal. So the preliminary budget was an 8.5% increase for active employees. Our rate renewal is a 6.2% rate renewal. Also adjusted was the patrolman salaries was off by $2,971.19. So that's added on the expenditure side. Like I noted, the change in cherry sheet offset state, county, and choice and charter assessments. That was a change of $194,537 on the expenditure side. And the Monty Tech assessment, we got our preliminary draft budget from Monty Tech in my presentation on February 14th was a 2.5% increase. Our actual assessment right now, they have to still vote as a committee, is a 12% increase. So that's a increase of $100,654.60.
Do we know what the increase in our attendance? I mean, is this?
It's 93 to 97
So 4
students.
additional people. Okay.
And it was also based on our minimum required local contribution
Yep.
formula. So those were the 2 main driving factors for that. So that leaves a surplus right now of $171,520.19. I noted at the Finance Committee meeting on Thursday as well, I have identified our worst-case scenario for if all abatement applications were approved and adding in interest for if any interest needs to be returned to as part of that process, minus what we have available that in our overlay account that can go towards that, that's not already earmarked for pending ATB cases or exemptions, and the amount is 1.5 million. So that would be an article, and you'll see it in the draft warrant that I put in an article for the overlay that would come out of free cash. And our free cash number, our certified free cash number is $2,838,550. So reducing that by 1.5 million would leave available 1.33855. My recommendation is at this point to add an additional 500,000 towards the capital plan from free cash. And the other revenue from free cash would go towards stabilization, potentially special purpose stabilization, and any monetary articles. So at this point, I'll hold off on the special purpose stabilization specifically, pending when the warrant closes and what we need for any monetary articles potentially. And also, I didn't mention OPEB, so that's one of our financial policies I'd want to meet as well, as putting money into OPEB out of free cash. So
Everybody's favorite, OPEB.
OPEB, yes. What does OPEB stand for? And annual town meeting warrant articles. There's a draft of the warrant in your Google folder. They're all the standard articles that we typically vote on, with some exceptions, and I can highlight those. I put in placeholders for the sewer articles. We haven't received those yet, but I put in placeholders. I put them in order that we typically fall on the warrant, so the letters don't switch around, and it's less confusing overall. So the ones that aren't standard that we did get there's an article from the Historical Commission. They did submit the same article last year, but withdrew it. It was for funding for a matching grant that they would like to apply for to do a inventory of the historical properties. That amount is $25,000. So it would be a reimbursement type grant, so we'd need to upfront that $25,000 and get reimbursed for half that amount. There are articles for the clerical bargaining unit agreement that is set to expire in June. We'll just be beginning negotiation shortly. We're trying to finalize a beginning kickoff date. But I wanted a placeholder in case we needed to keep that on the warrant, as well as the fire union collective bargaining agreement. And we will be, had our first meeting, and I'll be requesting a meeting with the board in the near future to discuss an executive session, that union agreement. And the Personnel Committee submitted a warrant article. They are currently doing a comp and class study with a consultant, and there'll be an impact for the wage schedule for fiscal '23, so that article addresses that. And the last one on this draft warrant is for a TIF agreement with Lufa Farms. You've heard the proposal from them. It's the same property as the Bright Farms proposal. So that is still on the horizon as well. I think their goal was to get that rolling as soon as possible. And I've reached out to that, our person that we've been communicating from Lufa Farms, to see what the status of that is and if it's needed for this town meeting, or if it needs to be pushed further out. So that would be, I would want them to come in and do a more thorough presentation with the board, to hear, and for the public's edification as well about the project, because it's a really great project for Lunenburg.
Yep.
Are there any?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just have one clerical thing, that if we could change the Board of Selectmen recommendations to Select Board recommendations, since we made the effort to change,
Yes.
change our title.
That's an easy one.
Any other comments for the town manager related to that discussion? All right. Going to current business. So we have up here authorization from Select Board to expend $10,000 on tax assessments. So as we discussed, as I read in the announcement earlier, so based on the public procurement laws, the first threshold is 10,000. So anything below 10,000, you can kind of directly go out and contract with. When you get into the $10,000 to $50,000 range, you have to have a written scope. There's a bunch of other requirements. And then when you get into the 50,000 and above range, you need to have an RFP. In this case, what occurred was we had an RFP posted. A vendor did not respond within the timeline of the RFP. And so we can only hire that vendor for up to $10,000. So the RFP is in the process of being republished with a closing date of the 23rd. And that would mean that, basically, and we expect that if we vote on this money today, that they will get started next week. The RFP will close the following Thursday. The town can turn around with a quick award, and if it's the same vendor, then we'll come back with another request. So this is from the $150,000 that the Select Board already committed. This is asking the board to vote to expend. So from that commitment, $10,000.
Clarification question, if I could.
Yep.
The threshold that you mentioned, $10,000, are we authorized to expend up to $10,000, or does $10,000 start the new threshold? In other words, should we be doing this for $9,999.99?
I believe it's 10,001 is the new threshold, and that 10,000 is the end of it, but is it 9,999? Okay.
Let's do it for all nines, would
right.
be my
Okay,
suggestion.
so we'll do it for all nines. All right.
That would be a weird threshold, but
Well, if it's 10,000 and above, then we need to do something lower than 10,000.
All right.
yeah, I understand your point. but I would- Again, I'm not going to quibble about $1.
It's actually a penny I'm going for here.
That's it.
All right.
Now my head hurts.
Is there a motion to expend? And
I move to, that the Select Board authorize the expenditure of $9,999.99 for on-tax assessment services.
second.
Second, yes.
All right. Any additional discussion on this? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. All right. The motion passes. Excellent. All right. So we will look to have the second authorization for this in the coming weeks, once we have the proposals back and able to, and the town's procurement officer, which is the town manager, is able to move forward. All right, so we need to review the town manager evaluation process and timeline. It's that time of the year again. Where are we at? Did we put anything in the drive about it?
Yep.
I thought we did. I don't see
I
it.
don't
No.
see it in the drive.
No.
It's not there.
Still don't see it.
That'll make for a quick review.
Make sure it's coming next week.
That'll make for a quick review.
Well, are we hurt by coming back to this next week?
No.
All right, we will re-engage this topic next week. Approval of minutes for January the 24th, 2023. This was session 2, which we had held off once. That way the members could take a little more time and review that. Is there a motion to approve?
Oh, yes, that was,
I move to approve the minutes of January 24th, 2023, session 2, as presented.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any additional conversation, comments? All right. As many as are in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
And I'll
Any
abstain because I
abstentions?
wasn't here.
All right. All right, 4-0-2-1. Warrants, no warrants today. Action items, we did hear from one resident asking for us to discuss the culvert on Flat Hill and where we're at with that. Does the board have any other action items today?
Mr. Chair, I would, in the public comment, there was that project or the potential water district article that the resident, Ms. Jordan, brought up, and I think we should probably at least have that on our radar to discuss, because I think beyond the water district issue, having somebody, depending on the seriousness, and obviously the Board of Health and Conservation Commission may want to be involved in that property to disturb something that had soil contamination and then, try to get 50 homes or 25 homes on the 50 acres. Maybe that's something that we want more widespread residents to know about.
Okay. All right. Any other action items today? Committee reports. Any committee reports? All right. Okay. All right, upcoming meeting schedule. The next meeting is going to be, we have 2 more meetings this month, on the 14th and the 21st. I do have one thing to comment on. I am going to be unavailable for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so to the vice chair, Mr. Alonso, if I can just ask you to step in. If anything comes up, I'm not going to be available this weekend.
No problem.
All right. So I know that sometimes not much happens on the weekends, but this weekend in particular. All right. So our next meeting is going to be for the next 2 weeks. Then we are taking the 28th of March off, and we'll resume in April. For public comments, any public comment from the town manager tonight?
No.
No? Any public comments from the public tonight? Yes.
Good evening one more time. First, I just want to apologize to the citizens of Lunenburg for not what I said to you about my anger about me being involved in a letter. That's totally unprofessional and should not have been read, period. The other thing is, Mr. Jeffries, I just don't know in your investigation why you always bring it about you. Conclusions. You, for a good one, was that you made a comment before that the DOR looks at all lakefront properties as the same, but you felt that Hickory Hill should pay more than Whalum. That's what's irritating people. There's an investigation. You don't take a side, and that's what you've been doing all along this investigation. Now, I don't know if you know it, but that's what, you're coming to conclusions. And Mr. Alonso said it right. All we want is to talk to CJ and get his numbers. He's never told anybody about the numbers. So that's what I wanted to say. And like I said, I did get upset because my family's in there. That letter is not right, period. It should never be brought in. And the same thing with you. I mean, if your feelings get hurt, I apologize for that, but not for what I said, because you're in the middle of it too. But that's the job you decided to do. If you don't want it, then resign from it. But don't, I mean, it's black and white. And the last question I got is, Mr. Franco, you've never given a thought about what happened. You've been on that board for 10 years during this whole thing.
Well, that's because there is an investigation going on, and I'm not taking a public side. Precisely what you just said.
Well, it's oh, boy. Okay, no, I
Right?
appreciate
Do you
that.
want impartiality and fairness?
I
That's what I'm
want the
doing.
truth. That's what I want. I want the truth.
Right.
I want to know when the bills were mailed. I want to know what's going on. I want to know we're in week number 9 and we're still talking about this. I mean, people's lives got to go on. You talked about being a volunteer. I volunteer for a lot of things, as people know, but I also have a job, and it's tough to do all this stuff. And I appreciate you guys. You guys all have jobs too. But the bottom line is you got to care about one thing, it's the people. And that's what we care about. At least that's what we do on our lake committee, is we care about the people. We want the truth. That is all we're asking for, and we're not getting it. And a lot of people put a lot of time into facts and figures like the Lux, Jackrabbit, our committee. You know, there's no secret investigation going on, looking behind the door. You know, we're out there trying to find the truth. We want to make sure it's right for the town. And right now it's not. But maybe it is. at least someone tell us that. But don't string us along, because the more you string, the more the rumors are gonna go. And then you're gonna get the nut bags, like the letters that you read. Those aren't true. You gotta think about you gotta censor what you're writing, and you gotta censor what you read. So that was my comment on that, and I appreciate you guys doing what you're doing. And trust me, I know about volunteerism. We do a lot of it. And I know that sometimes, you're saying you don't get paid. Well, there's other satisfaction. And right now, you say that the board has nothing to do with this. Then don't waste our time and do the investigation. We want to know who to talk to. And right now, it's you guys. And that's why we're here. So again, I want to thank you all for what you do, and have a great night.
Any other public comments this evening?
Carl Luck, 50 Sunset Lane. I was happy to hear tonight. I thought there was going to be an update, but I guess that was the comment at the beginning regarding the people. I don't know. I don't understand. I just want to go back and beat this horse again. I don't understand. The whole issue revolves around the 135%. And I don't understand why that isn't being dug into. I appreciate your getting emotional and your statements, but even in your statements, Mr. Chairman, you never alluded to the fact, you never said why we weren't getting a simple look into the calculation of the 135%. We know that that's the problem. It's that simple. It's that focused. And we also know, which should set some alarms off here, that the process wasn't followed per the DOR, that they should have taken 24 months of sales into account. And the assessor has been quite open and frank about this before he was, gagged, that he did not take those into account. He only used the 8 properties from 2021 in the analysis, and that the other properties were used after the fact, was his quote. So that's not the process. So we already know that there was a deviation from the DOR process in that regard that would have certainly, as you heard, affected the 135%. I don't understand. I'm just so frustrated. There's no discussion. I don't understand why someone like Mr. Alonso, perhaps a good engineer who's used to challenging experts, I'm sure, can't sit down for 2 hours with the principal assessor and understand where does the 135% come from, and if he had used the full 24 months, what would the answer have been? Not being able to get that, great, the assessments are going to go forward. The abatements are going to go forward. We need that information for those abatements, because if that calculation was wrong, how do we defend the fact that our assessment was wrong? We're going to bring people in here who are going to come look at the houses, look at the properties, and then I suspect, and I'm not an expert, you are, that they're going to go back and they're going to go look at the land table and they're going to look at all these things that have been updated with this bad information, and they're going to say, well, yeah, that's it. I'm not going to question your land cost tables. I'm not going to question, your quality of sales. So we need to get that right up front, because that's a fundamental issue, and it's simple. It's simple. I know Tom could sit down and in 2 hours understand how does this work, and if I put the correct number of properties in, what's the correct answer? And if that correct answer comes out to be it's not 135, it's 85, or somebody's taken a guess at the calculation and said that it would be significantly different. I don't know. I'd like to know what that process was too. But if it's that big a difference, then this whole abatement process is significantly different. And we're plowing into the abatement process, and all your team has managed to do, is to hire some assessors. They haven't asked the fundamental question that we need to know as homeowners: is it correct or is it wrong? Because I don't know what the right starting point is. I am sure it's not what's on the table, and it's not what we're going to go sit in hearings and hear it should be. And it's not what these assessors that are coming in to look at our property are going to really care about. They're going to take the constants and the values from us. So please, I just don't understand how you can get so frustrated because of all the work and this most critical question, which is the simplest question, doesn't require any history. This most simplest question can't get answered, that could get answered, I am sure, within a 2 to 4 hour session. It's unbelievable to me that you don't see that as an issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luck. Any other public comments from the public? All right, any public comments? Anyone online? No? Any public comments from the board?
I just want to clarify that I never read a letter into the minutes. I referred to a letter. I did not say a gentleman's name. I just referred to a letter. No letter was read out loud. But we can print out the hundreds of emails that we've gotten and make them public for people to come and take if they want. I don't recall receiving hundreds myself. I will follow up with that and see how many hundreds I've
Hey,
gotten.
Phyllis, sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
But maybe we take the
Forgot your
time.
gloves, Phyllis. Phyllis. When you pick it up, make sure it's empty under the chair. Okay, there you go. All right.
Now, don't take the chair. All right, good night. All right, sorry about that.
That's okay. That is all I wanted to clarify.
I just have a brief public comment. One, based on my experience in town on other boards, whenever we stifle public comment to any degree, it always causes more problems than it's worth than to just let people say their piece, because it really is that safety valve in town that lets people feel like they're letting off that steam, and even if our comments are unpalatable and we completely disagree with them. So I appreciate the chair's allowing public comment and for people to have their say at the end of this meeting. So I just wanted to note that. Two, the point brought up by Mr. Luck, I am also very curious as to how he derived his land valuations. I would appreciate personally if he could meet with some members, whether it's the investigation team or you know, the board as a whole, to take them through the numbers, and then for our knowledge and information. And the third point is, you know, this has been a difficult situation, and I appreciate all the work that's gone in from everybody on this board and, you know, within the community. And I do agree with the sentiment that everyone should try and understand that, you know, I firmly believe that this board's interest is trying to make sure that whatever happened with this tax assessment, if there were any errors made, that they're not repeated in the future, because it only serves it does not serve the town for these errors to be repeated, because, you know, as we know, if there was an error and it shakes out that way, and we end up having to, you know, expend $1.5 million to make up a shortfall due to an error or a shortcoming within the DOR formula for this, it's something that we have to consider in the future, and because when that's corrected through the abatement process next year, there's going to be many more families in town who see substantial increase in taxes, and then we'll have many other unhappy citizens. So it's just something that, you know, I believe this board does have the best interest of everyone in mind, and I just encourage all of us to keep focusing on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dwyer.
Just two quick things. One is I realize that the situation is probably not ripe at this moment for this, but I do still see value in having a joint meeting once there's the outside assessors are in place and a schedule. You know, the Board of Assessors is able to come up with a schedule for how they're going to do that. I do see some value in having a joint session with this board for them to come before us and just tell us what's going to happen with that. Secondly, Tonight, I will not address any particular public speaker by comment when they are not here any longer to respond, but I will say that one of the speakers called me out in particular and said, "And why haven't you taken a position?" That's when I knew I was doing it right.
Agreed.
That moment. If the perception out there is that I haven't taken a position yet, I'm doing it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franco. Mr. Alonso?
The only thing I want to say at the end here is that to the last speaker in public comment and the frustration that they're showing, I would say that some of the lingering agitation is a change in expectation. So those numbers and those things haven't been forced because up until now, there was the attempt, at least in the beginning, to see if there was something that could be determined as a basic error, if we could do, in the very, very long odds that we could, redo the assessment. That's what we were focused on. It became clear within the first few weeks that that was not possible. And I want to make clear that that is not possible. Where we are now is where we are, and there will be, as the chair said, no reassessment done on the whole town. That is an impossibility at this point. It is not going to happen, and nobody should expect that it's going to happen. The only thing that we can do going forward for those properties that feel they were overly assessed is the abatement process. It's the only thing allowed by law, and we have to focus on that. The long-term investigation has to be exactly what Mr. Dwyer has said, which is we have to make sure that we understand what the process was, and if anything can be shown to be done in a way that created this potential overassessment, is corrected. We've already unearthed some problems that are very clear. Data storage and data collection at the town level needs to really be addressed. I think oversight of principal assessors the principal assessor has to be addressed. Those are things that are clear already because there was knowledge of facts that weren't known by the boards and people who should have known them that have a severe impact on people's lives. So that is the focus for me long-term. But if people are coming here expecting there to be a change that your tax bill is going to be different from this board or the Board of Assessors outside of the abatement process, that is not going to happen. So I just want that to be clear. And lastly, a slight detail, while the entire email, going back to the email issue, was not read from the announced thing, there was a section that was verbatim read. So it wasn't read in its entirety, but part of it was read.
Not by myself.
Correct.
That
That
was-
is not correct.
I did not read.
You did. You read the beginning part of it, what it was about.
No, I didn't.
Okay?
That is
Okay.
not, Mr. Alonso, that is not my recollection.
Anyway.
But I do believe she is correct. But may I just revisit something quick?
Sure.
Actually, this is a point, I even forget what document it was at this point, but it said, it was read in from the public, or said that the Board of Assessors said at their last meeting that the only recourse will be appellate court. I don't believe they said that. That is not accurate. It's the appellate tax board. That's probably what they meant to say. Secondly, I don't, and I could be wrong about this as well, I don't know that the Board of Assessors said that that would be their next and only recourse because, of course, they still have the entire abatement process to go through. So the next step is not appellate tax board. The next step is the abatements. So the appellate tax board comes only after there's the abatement application is adjudicated. So-
Right, I think that's what they were asserting. I mean, whether correct or not, and I don't remember what was said. They were asserting that the strategy was going to be, the speaker felt that the strategy of the Board of Assessors was that we're going to let the time lapse and you'll have to go to the ATB. That's what That's what they're asserting.
Yeah, that could very well be, in fairness. That could be what the assertion was.
Yeah.
That is not exact, what.
Having listened to the meeting, I do not agree with that assertion. I do not think that is the intent of the Board of Assessors.
I would also say that there is a very strong built-in incentive for them not to do that. That is a mess and a quagmire that, if can be avoided, they would rather avoid. So,
Yeah, so I was, I appreciate the board's comments tonight. I know that, you guys have been working with me for a while. It's atypical for me to get emotional and heated about things. I think it's human as well for it to occur. I think that in our town, we obviously, I'm encouraging my fellow members here, we need to resist the we need to resist the urge, how do I want to word this? It's obvious that certain things in town are beyond the merits, that that some things are personal, that some things have to do with personalities, and that it's not always about, for every individual, doing the right thing, being honest, having a sense of integrity, that, everyone who comes before us, every member of the public has varying levels of characteristics. And most people, I genuinely believe, the overwhelming majority of people are genuinely good. And, there's a reason why we drive down the highway and everyone's not crashing into each other. It's not just self-preservation. It's also, we care about each other. I mean, I think it's our nature to want things to be a bit orderly and for things to be conducted in an orderly way. I understand the outrage that people have, and they don't, there's a lot of bad information. I mean, a lot of people don't know how their government works. And so they're hearing bits and pieces, and they want to hold on to hope. And I think that some people have dishonestly peddled false hope to people instead of giving accurate information, for sure. But it's the challenge that we have is to make sure that the population that we're here to serve is getting as good of information as we can. As we go forward, I know we kind of need to do a all hands on deck in every which way when it comes to communication. Something I've learned over these last couple weeks is, the town manager is our procurement officer. She is our Freedom of Information Act officer. So every email that comes in, she's our community relations person. And so there has just been a flood. Some things I've said to the town manager privately that I want to share with the board is from my lens, it looks like there's a need for human resources to be a 40-hour-a-week position, and it seems as though there's a need for there to be someone else who's handling Freedom of Information Act requests, someone else who's handling some of the communications that don't require that kind of higher level. Obviously, those things cost money. I've asked the town manager to consider what those costs could be, if there's a way to build it into the budget, or if there's a request to come to us with ARPA funding. I do understand that it's been challenging for staff. Staff have fielded a lot of phone calls and a lot of time interacting with residents, way far above and beyond what is average. And it's resulting in us being able to, it's kind of like, I wouldn't say pick or choose, but it's difficult for people to be able to get their jobs done and then also maintain what has been a high level of responsiveness to residents. That something has to give here, and we got to find a solution. I hear what's being said, and I understand it. Speaking with the town manager, I do understand that certain decisions are made to kind of get people through and to kind of funnel the flow of information and to make sure that as information comes out that it's fully accurate, especially right now when if you misspeak in any kind of way, that it's being kind of torn apart. And so I think that there is, we have our work to do. I would encourage my colleagues here to think about the ways that our government can become more efficient, that these kinds of crises highlight the stress points. And so what are the stress points? And as we move forward, not just thinking about it from the assessor's side perspective, but also from our side of how can we have handled this situation better going forward. If there is another crisis with another board, and there is a demand that has a broad impact, what systems can we get in place so that way we can methodically work through these things. Yes, there's going to be an element of just naturally responding to stuff as it happens, but it seems as though, some of this we could have been better prepared to handle. I don't think that in our structure to get to this point that we've ever kind of come up with that plan. And I think that there's a huge need to do that, to figure out how we deal with the communications and community crisis, how we communicate it, how we bring people on. Something I said previously was if we didn't have ARPA money, how would we get through this? How would we get through this? And that's something that I think we need to keep in mind of how we're best positioned to respond to something in the future. Because I think that, in this area of chaos, not everyone is comfortable in chaos. But I think in this area of chaos, it has provided an opportunity for really people to have a false, the trust in government has been decreased fully. How do we recover from that? The character of our town, something that our representative said to me privately is that Lunenburg has a really distinctive character compared to many other like communities. It's a very distinctive kind of community general culture here. And it seems to be shifting. It seems to be shifting into this fight mode about everything. And how do we get back to the culture that we have, and not just the culture of anger and frustration, but the culture of working together, of taking our anger, taking those things that upset us, and having them use that energy to make our community better for all of us, rather than pointing fingers and getting upset. So I think there's a task in front of us that we really need to tackle here over the next couple of months. And, I'm not saying this is empty words. I have no capacity. So I'm looking at the other end of the table here. I have no capacity. I think we have the need here to do this. All right, that's all I got for tonight. Any public comments from you?
No.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
As many as are in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion passes. We are adjourned at 10:14 p.m. Everyone at home, hope you have a wonderful evening, and we will hopefully get through this a little better next week on the 14th. Have a good night.